Good afternoon, everybody. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Lorain, Ohio, in case you don't know where you are. I want to call to order the Academic Distress Commission for this meeting Tuesday, March 19th, 2019 at 5 p.m. Start out with a roll call.
Mr. Coffin?
Present.
Mrs. O'Brien? Present. Dr. Simpson?
Present.
Dr. Solis? Present. Mrs. Zander?
Present.
So in following the agenda, we're just going to flip-flop real quick here. Let's stand for the presentation of colors.
Turn, heart. Face it, heart.
And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance for our students.
Order, heart. Right turn, heart. Color guard, off. Order, out. Color guard, all up.
Please have a seat. So we're going to break a little bit of protocol before we do the roll call for approved agenda. I just want to make sure to recognize the junior ROTC for their splendid presentation of the arms and our students who are doing the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could just please give them a quick round of applause. And at this time, I'd like to introduce robotics. Our robotics club.
Hi, thank you. I'm Ryan Dickinson. I'm one of the assistant coaches with Longfellow Middle School Robotics. Our head coach is out ill today, Denise Varney, and the other assistant coach is in Florida, where she lives, and joins us every week. She flies back and forth. Okay. We have Team Prometheus, and they would like to tell you a little bit about themselves.
I'm Celine Rivera. I am in 7th grade. This is my first year of robotics, and I mainly work on the book along with driving whenever possible. Amber, who is sadly not able to make it today, was the main driver, and she also programmed all the buttons on the robot so we're able to drive it easily. She's also in 7th grade, and it's her first year of robotics. And we have won 7 awards this year.
Hello, my name is Hannah Jackson. I'm in 7th grade. This is also my first year, and I help with the book and I make it.
Hi, my name is Jared Jackson. I mainly build and help with the program.
Team Prometheus is going to flip a cap. This is one of the things that they have to do. Very good. Thank you. They're going to introduce themselves and also show you how they can shoot a flag. They're going to take the ball.
Hello, my name is Tammy. This is my second year of robotics. My main job of the robotics team is to drive, program, and scout over the Hi, my name is Jack. What I do is building and power system and engineering notebook. I'm in 6th grade and this is my first year.
Hi, my name is Madison. I do the engineering notebook and also the
My name is Jonathan, and I help build and I also do some of the programming. We want to sit with us.
We have our last team, and this is the team that will be going to Worlds down in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hi, my name is Logan. I'm a 7th grader. This is my first year on the team. I'm a programmer, builder, and driver.
Hi, my name is John. This is my second year on the robotics team. I'm a programmer, driver, and a builder.
Hi, my name is Shane. This is my first year on the team. I build, I do the book, and I drive and help with programming. Hello, my name is Shane R. I help with the book, I help build, I help program. I'm on drive team, and this is my second year on the robotics team.
The reason why they do not have a robot to show you is they are upgrading their robot to be awesome at Worlds. Now, the other thing that I do want to tell you is I bet that you're sitting there wondering how you can support our robotics team. So, we do have papers here for Applebee's and Brown Bag. We have 2 fundraisers coming up. They're going to be sitting over by the table if you would like to support us. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having us.
All right. So approval of agenda. Is there a motion? Roll call?
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Sampson?
Yes.
Dr. Solis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zander?
Yes.
Approval of the November 28th, 2018 and December 7th, 2018 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Sampson?
Yes.
Dr. Solis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zander?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And at this moment, we are going to have our public comment.
Could I make a comment before we do that, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, this is the first meeting since November, so I think it's important that I address the public in this fashion. And I would like to welcome Diane Taylor and Randall Sampson to the Academic Distress Commission. My involvement in Lorain City Schools has been well documented over the years. Educator, department head, announcer, parent, community commission member, and advocate of the Lorain community. What I've seen happening over the past 20 months is very troubling and disappointing. Hurriedly passed in June of 2015, House Bill 70 at its core is a bill that went against the basic principles established by our founding fathers as the cornerstone of our democracy. When James Otis used the phrase "no taxation without representation" in 1765, when referencing the American colonies and their brewing tensions in Great Britain, I doubt that he could envision a time when citizens of a community like Lorain, Ohio, in the 21st century in America would ponder the same thought. The reality is that Lorain's local tax dollars are being used by the state CEO without true oversight, as the elected Board of Education and the people of this community have little say or role in the decision-making in its own school district. Sadly, the American system of checks and balances has seemingly been forgotten by those who concocted this state takeover. The founding fathers, men like Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, and Madison, are rolling over in their graves because of what is happening here. I am pleading with the powers that be in Columbus, Ohio. House Bill 70 needs to be dealt with immediately by Governor Mike DeWine and statewide legislators on both sides of the aisle who have been elected to represent the people. Notice I said elected to represent the people. As I just alluded, the current situation here in Lorain finds itself as one in which the elected Board of Education has been de-emphasized in its voice of governance and its impact of its own school system. An academic distress commission was put in place to hire a CEO who would serve to rule with power in our district in a fashion that not even the President of the United States enjoys.
Go Trump!
This was a recipe for disaster, and our community would serve as its playground. As a realization that this has been a failing endeavor, I am encouraged by the recent bipartisan wave of events in the state capitol. For example, Governor DeWine commenting on the importance of local control of schools. Representatives Joe Miller and Don Jones introducing legislation that calls for elimination of this very ADC and the assisting of low-performing schools by providing coordinated support systems like after-school enrichment and social health services. Nathan Manning introducing legislation with Senate Bill 110 that is designed to help create an environment of more control at the ADC so that people that are not from here or involved in this community do not have a greater stakeholder role than those that do. Paul DeMario, Ohio State Superintendent, said last week when addressing the State Board of Education regarding House Bill 70 that it has too much hostility and too many challenges to work well. He went on to say by having the state impose itself on districts instead of working with them to bring change, too much acrimony is created. Amen, Mr. DeMario. Amen. Everyone in this room is aware that Lorain City Schools has its issues, but those shortcomings were dealt with in the spirit of cooperation prior to the arrival of House Bill 70 and David Hardy. The narrative that nothing has been done is simply false. For example, under the Superintendent Jeff Graham, Lorain City Schools is working with the Ohio Department of Education in a collaborative fashion, which included helping to introduce and improve wraparound services, advanced community involvement, and curriculum alignment, just to name a few. Even with the shortcomings that the district faced, positive change was beginning to occur in the implementation of the 6 priorities, if you recall, which were introduced: cultural competency, graduating for college and career readiness, instructional standards and academic rigor, communication engagement, staff recognition and retention, and professional learning communities. Unfortunately, not long after, House Bill 70 took root and began the process that has proved to be very ineffective and harmful to our community. The time has come to end this carnage and the unmitigated disaster known as House Bill 70. This bill needs to be purged from the landscape across the state of Ohio. To quote the public educators partners when referring to House Bill 70, the law is undemocratic because they take away power from locally elected school boards. Unaccountable because they give one person, the CEO, total control over every facet of the schools. Unacceptable because the reliance on test scores in underfunded schools disproportionately impacts minority families in low-income communities. With that said, the following concept on leadership was sent to me by a caring member of the Lorain community. I often refer to him as my Yoda, a true Jedi Master of Education, with his experience and integrity, as this declaration is derived from a book by Bernie Kosar, his Learning to Scramble, and it states, just because someone is in charge of an organization it does not mean he or she is a leader. In fact, if things are bad in an organization, it could be because leadership is lacking. Leadership is a positive attribute. It either exists in an organization or it does not. If it exists, the organization generally prospers. If it does not, the organization has leadership in name only. In reality, an organization without leadership is just a chaotic collection of individuals, all looking out for their own self-interest. Sometimes a person is in a position of authority who is not a leader. People follow a boss because they have to, but they follow a leader because they want to. The good leader applies positive motivations like, I will help you achieve more. The leader that is lacking relies on negative sanctions like, I will fire you. By appealing to the positive, they can generate a belief in the group's potential and be one in which motivates and inspires people around them. Furthermore, I will use a basic analogy from the world of sports. When the environment of the locker room changes and a leader becomes counterproductive and is no longer a positive change agent to the good of the team, knowing when to move on from that situation for the good of the organization is leadership. When the locker room is lost, it is time to move on, plain and simple. Because of what I've seen here in the last year and a half and the showing here tonight, one thing is clear. This situation with the CEO has lost its ability to lead. He has lost his voice. He should do the right thing and resign as CEO of Lorain. Appears that he will do what seems to be best to seek a retribution that turns the damage that this district has seen, especially with the news that House Bill 70 and this cozy setup are on a limited time. This commission should be ready to do the right thing in the event he will not. Until he goes from Lorain, chaos will continue to ensue in our community. As I sit here today on March 19, 2019, Lorain City Schools is worse off than it was prior to the state takeover. The formation of the Academic Distress Commission and hiring of CEO David Hardy. Because without this trust that we don't have right now in our relationship, you have nothing. With that, the time has come to end this relationship. Thank you.
You guys ready for the public? Yes.
Okay, so, we're in the public comment section, correct? We want to stick to the items that are on the agenda, on the public comment. That's included agenda items. The public comment is to that. That way we are not attacking individuals, attacking groups of people. And
I can't hear what you're saying.
there we go. Can you hear me? All right, excellent. So we are in the public comment section. So this is a chance where you have an opportunity to come up and do your public comment. And just as a reminder, we are in the public comment to have comment about the agenda and not attacking individuals or groups, because folks in here are neighbors and friends for years. So I just want to make sure that we have civil discourse about it. Okay? So,
But there's nothing really on.
so in this,
So nevertheless, my name is Christine Dorsey. I am a teacher at Southfield Middle School. I teach 8th grade history. And I would like to make a counterclaim to Mr. Coffin. And that has to do with the Class 8 test that he was playing, counterclaim, getting kids ready to pass the test. Always thinking, pedagogies. All right, since 2002, do you guys remember the PDK audit?
Yeah.
Remember that? They came in and they said, Lorain has 2 glaring problems. Budgeting and curriculum and instruction, okay? And it went on to say, you need to create a strategic planning committee, and they did. It was ran, I believe, by Tracy McCarty, okay? And they put together all these programs, and one of them was, if you remember, with Dr. Morgan, Target Teach, make teachers accountable. And we did, we increased our scores, we got better. But then again, we had to work. Teachers had to work. And it was unfair because why can't I sit back and just do what I've been doing for a long time? Why do I have to teach and try to improve the scores? So what we did was, and I called, indicators?
Yes.
They started going away. I don't understand why. We started, Mr. Coffin, doing our own things, right? And we forgot about there's an accountability out there called a test.
Right.
But we didn't know what to teach on the test, so the state said in 2010, we're gonna create standards.
Right.
Now you know what's on that test. So you, Chris Dorsey, why don't you prepare your lessons, called your curriculum, based on the standards? Break them down. Backwards design, pedagogy teachers, we know what that is,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You see what the kid has to know. Create your lesson based on that one piece of information. Well, okay, well, how do I do that? I don't have any books. Oh, you don't need books. It's called a computer. As a matter of fact, I made a list of the resources that Lorain has provided me that I have taken advantage of because I don't like using books. History Alive in 2000, I still use that. Formula Writing in 2006, I still use that. And when I was in the high school, I taught that, how to use formula writing. So kids in my history class can write beautiful essays and extended responses, what the teachers wanted. Formula assessments from 2010 to 2012. Reading Like a Historian from 2012 to this day, I still use it. It's all free. SIOP for our ELL kids because, you know, they're problem makers. Yep, that was 2015. Tools for the Thoughtful Assessment, Classroom, Harvey Silver, from 2010 all the way to 2014, and I'm still using it today. Avid, DOK training, Study Island, Active, Google Classroom, ANET, SchoolNet, Discovery Ed, Explorers, New Vision, and so forth. And yet, all I have to say, my name is Dorsey, and like we did for the Browns, we got rid of the weak links, that's all. Let's just get rid of the dead weight so that we can build up our team.
Right.
That's all we have to do. God bless America, God bless David Harvey, you're staying.
Right.
Staying until you get the job done. Thank you.
She needs to finish telling us.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Right.
let's call to order. Ladies and gentlemen, let's call to order. Okay, before we proceed, we're all adults, we're all passionate about kids, and we want to see the right thing, there's no doubt about that. But we also have to model to the young people who are in the audience. We have the 3-minute clock up so that everybody has an opportunity to speak, whether you like it or not, but we want to limit it to 3 minutes to get as many voices as possible. However, I did not anticipate that somebody or an adult would actually do a 10, 9, 8, and countdown. We see middle school kids, elementary kids present their projects in class to their peers, and their peers are very respectful for them because they come from respectful parents and a respectful community. And I do not want the entire world to think that Lorain is anything less.
Right. Amen.
We have class as Ohioans, and we have dignity and pride here in Lorain. I love each and one of you. I love your kids. I love the community. So let's be respectful of each other as we move forward. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Miss Rhoda Lee, and I'm here to say to all of you, I am saddened and surprised at your behavior. We talk about our children and their behavior and how they should be. Who was it said, come and let's reason together. Let's look at what's happening in our communities together. How we have become and are becoming divided over a House bill. This House bill is not new to Lorain, nor to the educators, so you Mr. Barone or you Ms. Simon. We discussed this back in 2009, that it was coming. Back in the year 2019 or 81, when the Lorain City Schools was down, and when the NAACP at that particular time filed a lawsuit against Lorain City Schools for the miseducation of minority children. We live in a community, an international community. 85 to 95% of our children are multicultural. And we're sitting in here acting as though we don't believe or we don't care. When are we going to come together and realize that it is about our kids?
Right. Right.
And I am ashamed to see the hostility that's been displayed in this room today. Yes, we have had many superintendents. The statistics do not lie. The data that came out even on Dr. Graham, and you speak of Dr. Graham when he was here, the same data, the same statistics. Yes, he did begin to organize a task force to carry on. At that time, we were talking about also House Bill 70. If you want to attack the House bill and the issue, taxation without representation, unconstitutionality, then do it on that basis. But you do not, and I resent it highly as an elder in this community, attack individuals. It hurts us as a people, as an international community. It hurts our kids. See, I want to see our kids hit that door. Many of them are coming into our school buildings, and you know it, traumatized by whatever is going on in their environment, in their homes and buildings. We need the resources to help our kids to be successful and to achieve.
Thank you.
No, let's stop the hate and begin to communicate and understand that we all living in the same situation. This is our home. This is our little village on the lake. It's about the kids. Let's stop attacking people. Dr. Graham started the task force. Dr. Hartley came in and picked up the task force where he left off. If you want to become involved, get involved on one of the task force and see exactly what's going on.
That's time.
Stop listening to everything that's happening. Get involved with what's going on here in our community. No, I don't like House Bill 70 as per se, but it's good because it is bringing some insight into what is happening in our community.
And that's time.
And we begin to see it and get investigate. So my time is up. I forgive it. I'm sorry. But please, let's not do this. It's wrong. Let's listen.
Thank you. Next up for public comment, please. And once again, we're going to give a 3-minute time frame so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Good evening to the chair, the commission, everybody here. Thank you for all coming. Real short, more a request than it is a statement. Based on knowledge of public meetings and how you're running this meeting, it was suggested in here that under public comment, we want to keep our comments to the agenda. So I would ask through the chair to the commission, can we please move the public comment section of this agenda to beyond the business so the folks in this room can hear the business conducted and then comment on that? I think that'd be more appropriate than having us speak on something we don't know.
Thank you, and we'll heed that suggestion. Thank you.
Today is it working? Yeah. Today
You're fine.
Quite
You're
late,
fine.
sorry.
It's fine.
Today I will be explaining to the room something I've learned from one of my teachers this year. Leadership. Leadership is defined as the ability to lead or guide individuals, teams, organizations, etc., but also Also, leadership has three components that are essential to influencing your followers, but more importantly, being a capable and competent leader. Those three components are purpose, direction, and motivation. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to elaborate on these three components and explain briefly why they are useful. First, purpose. Purpose is a plan of action of something that you want to accomplish. To increase the outcome and success, you should first solicit feedback before implementing your plan of action. Second, direction. Direction is the method by which you will plan to achieve your goal. Direction also includes informing your followers on how to complete said goal. Third, motivation. Motivation is the ability to empower one's followers to accomplish their goal. Let's not forget, motivation is quite contagious. Lastly, the leader must receive constructive criticism from their followers so that they may learn how to improve and become better leaders. Now, how can you expect us to follow you when you have failed to provide these? All of what I have just said and stated is something that I have not seen very much of, if at all, this school year. So all I ask is that you learn from my words and learn from your mistakes and learn to become better leaders. I see many great potential leaders in this room, and so I ask you to look within yourself, rise above, and lead this generation of scholars to the best, most successful people that they can be. Also, I might add, don't be afraid of failure, for it is the thing that allows us to learn and grow. I would like to end this with a quote from a great man named Colin Powell. Leadership is solving problems. The day your soldiers, in this case your scholars, stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them, and they have either lost confidence that you can help or concluded that you do not care. Either case is a failure in leadership. I hope you all have a splendid evening.
My name is Patty Kalo. I've worked for Lorain City Schools 16 years, and I work right outside the CEO's office. The other day I was in my room praying, and this thought came to mind. What needs to happen for evil to prosper and good men to do nothing? And I felt I needed to say something. I have known Mr. Hardy almost 2 years, and I know him personally. I see him every day, and he's a great man. He's always up, never talks about anyone. He's very positive. He's a hard worker, and it's been a pleasure working with him. And he doesn't repay evil for evil, as you can see through the newspaper articles.
Right.
He does not get involved in politics, only focuses on how to move scholars up the ladder of success. There are teachers that are not helping our students. They need to be held accountable. Teachers are paid whether a student gets an A or an F. In some of the classrooms, they have a poster that says, if you don't get good grades, I'll take fries with that order. I think that's demeaning to someone who works at a fast food restaurant, and also demeaning to the children. An independent company, TNTP, was hired to do a walkthrough about a year ago of 94 classrooms. Only 17% of the teachers were teaching to the standards. 1 year later, they did another walkthrough, and 34% are now teaching to the standards. Mr. Hardy is making changes. It takes time, and being fought every step of the way must be exhausting for him. It will take time to see the changes that are happening daily. He has weekly meetings with a great team that I know personally and support, and they are working to make changes. And it's so disheartening to see how one person can get a rally of people like this to diminish a man's character, tarnish his character and reputation. And people say the school is not safe. I walked the high school many, many times. There are 12 safety officers. I never have felt unsafe in that high school. So that's all I need to say.
Thank
Any additional comments?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Pamela Pinckney Butts, and I'm from Cuyahoga County. I came down here to see about you all because on yesterday, our governor made a decision to take money from education and transportation to put it into roads. And I'm concerned about that because House Bill 70 is a total sabotage of character for education. And 70 is to formulate more mass incarceration and privatization in prison systems. House Bill 70 is also another violation of religious freedom as well as economic burdens being lifted. It is another oppression of the poor because House Bill 70 reflects the fact that those who are poor will not have equal opportunities in education as well as there is this epidemic taking place in America that's very, very, very crucial, and we must pay attention. Because if you notice, House Bill 70 reflects oppression of females. Females are the conduit under which the canal is used for not only carrying children in birth canals, but also carrying children through the educational process. And when you oppress a female, you oppress the male, and you oppress the whole household. House Bill 70 is a slap in the face to all females, of all economic statuses. And I want to say to you today, you keep fighting, and you keep going.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Jay Pickering. I'm the president of the Lorain Education Association, who represents the teachers here in Lorain. Since the Academic Distress Commission has not met in 4 months, a lot has happened here in Lorain. And throughout that time, I have actually made some presentations to the Board of Education about some issues that have been occurring on behalf of the teachers and to keep the Board of Education clear on what's happening in the district. And I wanted to present this to you. I'm not going to go into detail on it. These are the 4 presentations I made over the past 2 months to the Board of Education. The first item on this is a discrepancy between myself and the CEO as to the attendance of the teachers last year. The CEO believes the teachers were absent on average 18.1 days last year, and by public records request, I have data that says more like 10 days a year, and that the teachers' attendance is at 94.5%, which is also the same attendance that is reported to the state of Ohio, which gives us the same attendance as a school district like Westlake for the teachers. In the information you have there, I have the public records request, as well as the responses, as well as an explanation of the various reasons for absence of teachers. And I'm not going to go into detail because we're time limited. The second one is a similar dispute over the attendance of teachers in the fall, in December. The CEO made the comment that 1/4 of teachers are absent any given day. That would be 120 teachers are absent at any given day in the district. Also, with the public records request, we received the data for the first semester attendance, and the attendance is at 96%. Teachers are doing a phenomenal job this year in attendance despite the tough conditions that we're under. So for the first semester, we're not 1/4. It was a very small amount. And the data's in here. Once again, public record requests are available. The third section is a survey of the teachers, which was presented on February 19th to the school board. I have put all of the results of that survey. It was done over about a 1-week period at the end of January, and I think it's self-explanatory. The pink sheet is referencing our new calendar for next year. Just for the record, the teachers of Lorain do not approve of the currently approved CEO's calendar for next year. The CEO's calendar, there's details here for you, only has 168 days of teaching for students. The calendar that the Lorain Education Association approved has 177 days of education for teachers, an additional 9 days of education. And finally, I just want to say, going into this year, the teachers were hopeful that we would work hand in hand with the administration to collaboratively develop strategies and policies to engage, nurture, and teach the students of Lorain. You know, we even changed the name of professional development. We called it Professional Collaboration Days. But what we learned was it was just a change in the name, not really a change in what we did. It was still professional development. The sad reality is we have not collaborated much this year, but have been dictated to, blamed, investigated, harassed, threatened, and criticized. We know we can help the students of Lorain achieve at their highest level, but we need to become part of a team, not just the target of criticism and blame. I have included in your information a letter from a high school teacher to the rest of the high school faculty that she sent out last month. It explains how she saw students in need of attention because she and other teachers are no longer allowed to build the professional relationships with students that are needed and that we previously had. It tells of her not following the current teaching script, but returning to some of her tried and true methods and how it helped one particular student. We are desperate to be considered valuable partners, not human capital, and given the tools and support needed for us to do the best we can do for the students. We want to be here for the students, and I'm asking for you folks in the Academic Distress Commission to help us with that. Thank you.
My name is Abby Romero. I've lived in Lorain my whole life, and I also work here in Lorain. And I have 3 children that go to school here. I have a 2nd grader, I have a 6th grader, and I have an 8th grader. So the schools I can speak of are Larkmore Elementary School. I want to give Miss Lewis a shout out. Love her to death. She knows my children. She's very great with all the children. And she'll tell you, all of the children in her school are her kids, and that's how she loves them and teaches them. Secondly, my other 2 are at Longfellow Middle. My girls have great teachers there that really know my students, know my daughters, and know what works for them to learn. And all 3 of my kids have great grades, doing all the good, everything they're supposed to do. I guess what I want to bring to this is, we don't have the time. Whatever the school board did before Hardy, whatever Hardy's doing now, we don't have the time to wait for these changes. We have to do something now. So my thinking as a parent is, I'm at both schools as much as I can be. I work full-time, I go to school full-time, but this afternoon, I'm on spring break from school, I spent the afternoon with my 2nd grade son and with his teachers. The teachers know that I'm there as much as I can be, I'm reachable, and so that would be my challenge to the public. If you really care about our scholars or our students or our kids in this community, we have to be there for them. It doesn't take a teacher. I was working with other kids today, and I'm just another parent. So we have that doing something like that. If we all just spent an afternoon a week, an afternoon a month, getting into our schools. When they see adults care and their presence, my kids are beaming every time I come. Even if I just can come and bring them lunch, have lunch with them. Other kids just love that. They love the attention that you're taking time to be there, part of their school day. So I have a minute left, but that's my challenge to everyone. If you're a parent or, like I said, we're all busy, we all work, but we don't have time to wait for these changes. Our kids are growing up. Right. My 8th grader is getting ready to go to the high school, and I'm scared to death about the high school. I really and truly am. So now I'm taking way more notice, paying way more attention to what's going on, because it ultimately affects my children. And no one's going to be, I've always said this every time I spoke up at town hall meetings, anywhere, no one is going to be a better advocate for my children than myself. Thanks. So I want everyone to know that's all.
Still public comment?
Mr. Hardy, I've seen you shaking your head for parent involvement. I know when we met in October, we asked you, how can we help? This was before the negative climate came. Your suggestion to us was to start a podcast. We offered to wash the kids' clothes. We heard kids weren't coming to school because they didn't have clean uniforms. We heard that there was EMAs that weren't put in the computer. We offered to help with that. We've offered to do anything, and we never received a phone call, not one. I was at the first meeting when you came to Lorain City Schools, and I tried to support you for the entire first year. I worked on your task force. I don't see any of those ideas that have come to fruition. I appreciated that you started the Parent Advisory Council. I was excited at the meeting. They listened to us. We made 2 lists, and then our follow-up email didn't reflect on anything we discussed. It wanted us to update the student code of conduct. You have parents that care. You have parents that want to be involved. You have parents that want to make a difference, and yet this is what it's turned into. We have tried to work with you. We have tried to help our scholars succeed, and we have seen that you aren't doing that. You are attacking our teachers. You're allowing your administration to bully our students. They're being threatened that they're going to be retained. What are you doing that is going to make a difference, that is going to help us get out of academic distress?
Good evening. My name is Merle Johnson. I'm a member of the State Board of Education, District 11, which covers 2/3 of Calhoun County and 1/3 of Lake County. So this isn't really my district, but I'm here because I care. I just really I'm really bothered by the hostility because it's really unhealthy for children and for adults. I understand why it exists, because House Bill 70 created that, okay? But we have to look at who to blame for this.
Right.
You blame the legislature, not everybody, okay? But the folks who put this in place were legislators. Nobody up here created House Bill 70. House Bill 70 was created mainly, my personal opinion, to break unions. I'm a union woman from way back. I taught in Cleveland 40 years. I was in leadership of the Cleveland Teachers Union for 26 years. And so I am union all the way to my heart. And I understand what is going on in this country and what is going on in the state. But what you can't allow the legislators to do is to pit one group against another. And that's what's happening now. And when that, I don't want you to think I'm like trying to be this big boss or anything. I'm just expressing my feelings. When I see the hostility, and there's people to blame for the hostility, I understand that. But sometimes we have to say, okay, we're gonna start over. You have a new ADC chair, and I'm hoping that from Mr. Hardy and from everybody here and from the educators and parents, all of you will say, okay, let's wipe the slate clean and let's go at this in a collaborative manner and do what we need to do to make sure that our schools are safe and productive for our students. The last thing that I want to say is that part of House Bill 70, House Bill 70 said that the CEO would be able to do away with the union contracts except for wages and benefits, and also if schools did not approve, they could turn into charter schools. That's by design. It's by design. That is the goal of folks in the state and in this country. As the earlier speaker from Cleveland, Ohio said, from East Cleveland, it's about privatization. So as long as you fight with each other, you're moving closer to the privatization of public schools. So we need to just take a deep breath and exercise some forgiveness and say, we're gonna make this work for our kids. That's all I have to say.
Public comment?
I guess mine would be a comment and a question. I don't know if it can be answered, but 156 students at General Johnny Wilson were threatened with retention. I know students at other schools have been threatened with retention. What is the criteria to retain? We received a letter home at General Johnny that they were having a family night. I went as a parent who goes to everything that comes home. I got there and it was about retention and attendance. Students that didn't come to school and that were retained. That didn't have anything to do with my children. There was nothing else there dealing with academics or nothing. There was no criteria given for retention. We have heard that it has to do with standard-based gradings with the 1s and 2s. Another school that my daughters go to, parents were told it was because their ANET score was too low. So what is the basis of the retention, and have the teachers been given any help to help these students that are low? Have they been giving the assistance to help the students that are lower in their class?
Thank you.
To the retention question? Hi, my name is Alexis Hayden. I'm a longtime teacher in Lorain, and I serve a specific role within the unit. Okay, I can be louder. Can you hear me now? Okay, my name is Alexis Hayden. I'm a longtime teacher in Lorain, and I serve a specific role within the union. I'm not going to say what it is, but I get a lot of phone calls, and I want to talk about how we can move forward, and I believe your name is Mrs. Jones. And you say to move forward with collaboration. In order to move forward with collaboration for teachers and for our kids, there has to be trust. And that is something that is severely lacking in our district. And in order to do that, there has to be transparency. In order to do that, there has to be the truth. Our kids come to school because they're afraid their teachers are going to get fired. Our kids come to school sick. They see administrators in various buildings, not all, but various buildings, come in and stare down their teachers. Why? What's the point of that? What are you looking for? Okay, what are you looking for? In order for us to move forward, we have to have trust. There are 3 words that I was told when I went into education: care, share, and trust. I was told that by a wise person. I live by that. Most people should. That's what we live by in education. We're in the people business. We are not treating our kids that way. Our kids are coming to school. They're afraid we as teachers are going to be fired. How can we, when we're being stared down, give our best to our kids? Our kids deserve the best. And when we aren't given the best from our administrations, not from all buildings. I'm not putting all buildings in that category. But when we aren't given the best from the people who we should be given, they should be giving us their trust in what we do as teachers, how are we supposed to give our kids the best that they deserve? Because we know what we can teach. That's what we do best. But when we aren't given the trust in our classrooms to do that, our kids aren't being given the best. Our kids are our priority as teachers. But you know what? Try trusting us as teachers, because every day we come to school and we want to give our kids the best. But the new administration, and I'm not talking buildings, trust us. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Public comment?
Hi, my name is Marla Davis, and I just have a quick question. I'm sorry. Moving forward, what initiatives will be put in place so that educators can help empower our scholars? And also, whatever happened to cultural competency?
So the question was, moving forward, what will we put in place to help our scholars and whatever happened to cultural competency? And so these questions will be addressed inside of the agenda. That way everybody will have time to come up, so wishes.
Hi, my name is Leona Torres, and I'm a senior at Lorain High. And I understand that telling us to calm down and be respectful, and yes, I agree we need to be respectful, but I don't see how they expect us to calm down when the students and the teachers are sick and tired of this. Imagine a random person coming into your house and trying to run your house like they've been here and like they know how to run the household when they clearly don't. That's too familiar to the students and the teachers of Lorain City Schools. I hate seeing my teachers stress over their jobs and their careers. I walk in the hallways and I see administrators, half of them are unknown by the students. I've seen with my own eyes an administrator walk by and other students say, "Who even is that? Why are they here?" We want our schools back. My teachers love their students, and they actually care about their students. Yes, obviously they're doing it because they get money, and that is what a job is. But I've seen them look past the money and actually look at the students' emotions and how they feel. And they become like family figures to these students. And I've seen the students come every day with a big smile on their face because, oh, I get to see my teacher today. I know they're gonna tell me something good. I know they're gonna motivate me to go to be stronger and to continue my education. And many of my teachers throughout elementary school all the way to high school, they've taught me that. And that's why I'm continuing my education and going to college, because they pushed me and they actually care about me. So I just want our schools back, and I just feel that something needs to be done and that changes need to be made.
Public comment?
Hello, I'm Marco Rivera. I'm a senior at Lorain High School, and I don't feel like I should attack Mr. Hardy or any of the administrators, because honestly, I don't really pin as much as that as I do as on House Bill 70. But I would like it to change, and that's coming from me to you, because I have asked you in the past if changes could be made, and nothing has happened. But I'm not going to stress about that right now, because there are bigger and badder issues that we can take care of right now than to worry about little issues like this. But I feel like Lorain High is like my home, and I don't want to feel like that's under attack, because I have to worry about kids fighting or kids getting hit. I have to watch my back every 24 seconds, and I can't relax and focus on my work without worrying about a kid wanting to hit me or something. But I just want to come to my home and be safe. I don't want to come in there and worry about fighting or having to protect myself, or what I need to do to protect myself in the future or anything like that. I want to focus on my work. I want to focus on what I got to do. I don't want to focus on somebody else that's gonna hurt me. Just like when I go home tonight, I'm not gonna focus about somebody trying to hurt me, because I'm home. This is my home. I'm relaxed there. But that's all I have to say, really. And coming from me to you.
Public comment?
Howdy. Nice to see you all again. Ryan Williams, I'm a junior, a student at Lorain High. And of course, I was at the last meeting, kind of messed up, but this time I got it, so. I'm gonna give a definition of a disease. Now, hold on. Wait until I finish. A disease is a disorder of structure or function in a human, animal, or plant, especially one that produces specific signs or symptoms, or that affects a specific location and is not simply a direct result of physical injury. Now, I'm not exactly calling anyone a disease yet, because we lack efficient information. Sorry, I lied to you at the beginning. But one large piece that would definitely help that come to shape would be one simple answer to one simple question. On behalf of the Lorain student body, on behalf of the Lorain parents, on behalf of the Lorain staff, and on behalf of most of us in this room, I ask that one question that I will rephrase forever. What is the end game here? What are the intentions? That was not rhetorical. I do expect an answer. Because that, for sure, would seize a lot of the problems that we have here. Having that ease of mind would certainly help us students, us parents. I mean, I'm not one, but you parents, the teachers, and all of that. We need answers because we lack them. Thank you.
Public comment?
Good evening, Mary Miller, East 34th Street. Announce our address still. Okay, I'm curious as I've received a few answers, but Mrs. O'Brien and Dr. Solis, okay, Mrs. O'Brien and Dr. Solis, have you been officially sworn in now? Yes, okay. Can we ask why that didn't happen the first time? Anybody?
They're not sworn in.
Anybody out there?
Who cares? You were appointed.
Okay, so none of the commission members were sworn in prior to February and March of 2019. There was a contract drafted. How is that valid? How is the contract? I'm asking this over and over again, and I get like 0 answers. What is she talking about? Can anybody from the state help me out?
I did not sign a contract drafted, so I'm
No,
not.
you did not, but the previous chair did.
Okay, all right.
Is that contract null and void? Nobody was sworn in.
Which
The other
contract?
academic dis-
Is there a title to the contract so we can look into it?
I can provide you with a copy of
Okay.
Mr. Hardy's contract with Anthony Richardson, the prior chair.
His contract.
Did you not receive a copy of the contract?
Whose-
You are the chair.
Whose contract are you referring to?
Mr. Hardy's contract with the previous chair, Mr. Anthony Richardson.
Okay. So I'll refer that to the Attorney General's office that handles the contracts so that we are official with the response. Is that okay?
Yes, I did ask that, you were at the last meeting that was in attendance, I maybe you didn't understand that, but nobody was sworn in, and there was a contract. So, I'm no legal, I don't know if the state offers a legal license in 1 year or in 5 weeks training. I'm thinking myself that would be a gentlemanly way to get out of this situation. And saying maybe this contract is not, valid. Yeah. So perhaps that might be taken into consideration. Now, will there be the 180-day and now 365 days and beyond evaluation of the CEO that was never conducted by the administration, or by, the Academic Distress Commission?
Correct.
Okay, will there be one? Is there one?
Correct.
Is there a rubric? Do we have a system now?
That will be in the agenda as part of
Okay, so I want to
the-
understand how the state expects this to work. If they haven't even sworn in their members, like they don't follow their own protocols, there is no protocol, we're just thrown out there to the wind, like. Okay, my 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna add, like animosity, the trust was eroded, the lies, the changing of the dress code with less than a month to school, the changing of the grading system in the middle of the quarter. My kids still don't have kindergarten and gym. If kindergarten gym doesn't have proper grades, his entire class don't have proper grades. The other parents March. So tell me how like 7th grade algebra can have properly, graded if kindergarten.
Thank you. Public comment, before we wrap it up, public comment?
Talking about a circus and we didn't create it.
Summer Harvey. I first kind of wanted to address the chair, if that's okay. I'm normally not a disrespectful person. I don't interact with any person in my life this way.
Yes, ma'am.
But if it were your children's future who was being attacked and compromised, I have a feeling that any one of you would have their emotions boiling over as well, and we should not be able to Has there been continued collaboration with the police department, because we understand that they were asked to leave the building and that we no longer need an SRO? And 2, are you considering restructuring your Title I fund allocation due to the fact that the extra administration has not helped the students in the way that maybe you thought they were going to originally, and we'd like extra teachers back in the rooms with the students?
I see people moving around, so I'm not quite sure. Yep.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Public comment?
Sure.
Hi guys, used to usually corralling kids in the gym, but not public speaking, so I'll try to do my best. My name is Caitlin Montana. I was born and raised here in Lorain. My grandparents are from Lorain. My parents are from Lorain. My friends and family are part of Lorain and teach here in Lorain City Schools. When I was growing up, Lorain was everything to me, and I spent all of my time always defending the city where I grew up. And everyone knows if you go outside Lorain, you tend to have to defend yourself a lot. And you get looked down upon, and it drives me nuts. I love growing up here. I love the diversity and the beauty that our city provided. And when I graduated high school and went to college, I decided to become a teacher. And my dream was to come back to Lorain and work for the city and make a difference in the students' lives here in the city. When I graduated in 2003, my only opportunity to come back was to be a coach at Southview High School for a couple years while subbing full-time. Back then, it was hard for teachers like me to get a job, so I had to relocate to Las Vegas, which, if any of you know, is one of the largest communities and districts here in the United States. And then after 9 years, I was able to relocate back to Ohio, where I still dreamed of moving back to Lorain and teaching in a community I grew up loving. In the meantime, I received a job with Cleveland Metropolitan School District at John Marshall High School, and I currently run our Unified Special Olympics programming within my school. I am super happy that I was able to recruit Lorain City Schools and the teachers here, special ed teachers here, to join in being a unified school for Special Olympics. And Lorain has become a great host for the unified basketball events. The teachers, aides, and students involved directly are awesome and one of a kind. However, today I heard a person who does not directly work with teachers, work with students, speak about violence and how they see no violence in the halls. And I can attest that that is definitely not true. On Thursday, this past Thursday, March 14th, while attending our Special Olympics event at Lorain High, a violent fight broke out in the stands during one of the games among student spectators. And while I'm more than accustomed of a fight here or there in a school building, as my own building is not perfect, I can attest that this particular fight was violent, and coaches from the Lorain High bench were forced to swiftly run up the bleachers to pull the students apart. Even when the coaches and security were able to pull these students apart, they refused to let up with their violent behaviors, kicking and swinging the whole way down the bleachers and out of the gym. These violent students had no regard for the spectators or students sitting peacefully around them, nor for the large population of special needs students that were in the gym for this planned Special Olympics event. When I came to Lorain that day, I not only brought my Unified Special Olympics team, but I also brought a YOU senior career coach who brought with her 12 students as spectators receiving community service hours for the day. This career coach is not only a Southview graduate, but one of my former Southview softball players from back when I coached for Lorain City Schools back in 2003. Our students from Cleveland could not believe all the resources that are given to Lorain City School students compared to what is offered to them in Cleveland. When they walked on Lorain High's campus, to them it was like a college campus compared to what they are given in Cleveland. However, we all know that Cleveland and Lorain are pretty comparable when it comes to the money and resources that we are given. The regular education students' reactions to the fight were, I can't believe that the kids in the suburbs act like this. They think Lorain is a suburb. My students do not know any different. They do not know Lorain is not really a suburb, but is very similar to Cleveland. They cannot believe students who are afforded so much more than them in terms of resources and opportunities would act like this, and how they saw on Thursday. They were also mind blown that any spectator found it appropriate to fight in the middle of an event such as Special Olympics. My special needs students were playing while this fight broke out and were clearly and visibly shook and upset by what was going on. Violence like that is scary on any level, but for the students who have special needs, they are especially scared in a situation like that. I overheard a representative from Special Olympics state, I came here for basketball, and I got a UFC fight as a bonus. As someone who was born and raised in Lorain, this statement made me very sad. It made me sad for the school, it made me sad for the students who are doing the right thing, and especially sad for the teachers and students who are experiencing violence like this almost daily. No one should be afraid to go to school. Teachers should not be afraid to go do their jobs, and they should be able to trust that administrators are helping them to raise young adults who will be entering the real world. The real world has consequences. Since the state took over, consequences for students such as these two fighting seem to be minimal in most cases. The answer seems to be more of a circle time where students gather to speak about their feelings instead of suspensions or expulsions due to violent behavior. Approaches like this seem to make violent students think that they can just continue to do their ongoing physical and verbal attacks both on teachers and one another, as they know there's a pretty good chance they will not receive any real consequences in most cases. These two particular students who have had fighting issues in the past embarrassed the school that day. School should be a safe haven, not a place of violence. When I decided to become a teacher, all I dreamed of was returning home to make my city proud of me by giving back. Now, after listening to my friends and family speak of their daily struggles within Lorain schools since the state takeover, I know I will never be able to return to the city I love to teach. There is no way I can put myself through those mental or physical struggles employees and students of Lorain are clearly experiencing daily, and I firsthand saw this last Thursday. I would rather continue to work for the half-broken system in Cleveland, under the Cleveland plan, where at least I can go to work daily not feeling underappreciated, and know that I have administrators who are backing us up, trying to provide a safe environment for both teachers and students. My dream of, due to House Bill 70 and what is going on, my dream of giving back to Lorain has been shattered, and for that I am sad.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the agenda. And we're going to talk about operational updates. Financial update from Mr. Hill.
Good evening. First off, let me start by saying kind of the packet I put together for you guys tonight, I take very minimal responsibility for it in the sense of, without my team, none of this would be possible. So I give 100% of everything. In a district this size, the day-to-day running of the financials would not be possible without a team that I have. So I'm very confident in them. That being said, the first item, and I did put together a packet for all the ADC members, as well as everything I speak to is also available on the table over there as well. The first section and the key points, it will point to the first three kind of handouts. And this is just the financial audits that I go through yearly. We have continued to, and even before I came to the district, I've had a very firm financial control of the district, and I'm very proud of my team in that sense. We have scored the highest level audits considered a clean audit. The 3 I've provided you, and probably even far back beyond that. If you go to the school website and go to my page, the treasurer's page, there is a link to the state audit, so you can go back as far back as you'd like and look, and you can see kind of probably the steps and the strides that we have come from as far back as probably 2002. So I won't go too much into depth in that, other than to say that if you look through them in the opinion sections of each one of them, we received the highest possible rating, which in a sense is a clean audit. They call it an unqualified audit, but for the state terms, that is the highest possible rating you can get in an audit. So I know there was some questions, concerns around that. The next item, I provided another copy of. Yes.
Before we go to the next item, you said there were some questions and concerns around what?
There were some questions and concerns in regards to the, maybe some of the things that have been provided by my team in the past, and whether or not we were audited and things like that. I just wanted that to be shown that we are audited annually, and it's a very in-depth audit by the state, and we continue to be audited. The other piece to it is the last year's audit is finished. It should be released, I would assume, probably within the next week or two. And in regards to financial pieces to that audit, again, clean audit, 100%. And this is in regard to the 17-18 school year.
And what type of audit? Is there a difference between this audit and a forensics audit?
When it comes down to, so specifically this audit, this is all things financial. This will explore every aspect of financial controls, looks at processes, looks at funding. It takes into account how we are doing transfers, down every level. Forensic audits, when you look at those specifically, typically those are put into place for specific items. So if somebody's going to come in to do a forensic audit, they are given maybe a list of specific things to look into. So it's probably more of a strategic audit to look at a handful of things that are already covered within the financial audit. And I had mentioned in the past, I will continue to mention, I welcome any sort of audit. I'm 100% confident my team will look at it.
Can I speak up?
Diane?
Yes, I think the concern, Josh, that you might be referencing is this year's spending, 2018-19, not the past years. I think the references that have been brought to my attention is this year's spending.
And that's my next couple of sections we'll get to this year as well.
Okay. So before we get to that, I just want to make sure that we're clear. On the forensics audit, it's specific items that we need to have audited. And is that something that the school district initiates, or is that something that the auditor picks up and says, we need to take a closer look at these specific items?
It can be initiated a few different ways. It can be something that's brought to attention to the state team when they are here, and I've seen them put on like an addendum to the audit to look at a specific incidents or specific item, something like that, or a specific pocket of funds and how it's processed, spent, things like that. You can have an outside firm do it, but the one through the state can be initiated a number of ways. I can say, there has been some concerns. Would you look into this? I don't know, being that they're my books, that it would make sense for me to initiate it, being that I know my confidence level in it. But again, I by all means welcome, if there are specific concerns, I would be more than happy to either put the person in contact with the state audit team, as well as, or if you wanted to send me an email with a list of concerns, I'd be more than happy to forward it on.
And has there been a forensics audit completed during your tenure? And what would be the appropriate timeline to make that request for a forensics audit?
They are ramping up. There has not been a forensic audit specifically since I've been here. Because that usually is an additional addendum that they would typically require an additional amount of money to look into it. It just doesn't fall underneath their typical scope. But I know they're more than willing to do it. And they are ramping up now to start pulling data for, we're kind of wrapping up this year, which is the end of the end of 18. This one, like I said, will be released in the next couple of weeks, and they are ramping up to start gathering information. It's a year-round process. So there's already starting to gather information for the 18-19 school year as well. So now would be the time that we could kind of let them know that there's specific items they should look into, and I know they'd be more than happy to.
And that 2-week audit will be reported by you online on the district site, or is there a lag time to wait a month, 2 months?
They release it, and it would appear then on that, the link on my page. I'd be more than happy to come back, discuss any findings, anything like that, supply that document. Actually, when it's released to me specifically, I would be more than happy to email it to the entire ADC if you guys would like, just so you can see kind of the same, what I've supplied you with this evening.
I think that would be great, but I will make a request that you email that to the entire committee here. And also please share it with the school board as well.
Okay.
That way everybody has eyes on it, and then share it with the community. We'll have it on a public link, and make sure everything's transparent, and we have a sense of collaboration.
Okay. The next item I have on here, just providing, just because it kind of segues into the third item I have on here, but I provided the copy of the 5-year forecast that was finalized in the beginning of December, along with the assumptions. That gives me a good segue. Well, first off, I also supplied the spending plan. Spending plan is what I do for kind of my own personal tracking system of taking estimates and then plugging in actuals at month end. So I take the financials at the end of each month and plug in actuals to kind of show how we're trending based on projections versus actuals. And according to the spending plan, when you look through it, we of course are doing better. I'm not shocked by that. When I come out and say the 5-year forecast is always worst case scenario. So if we weren't doing better than that, that would be very concerning, obviously, because I'm always assuming kind of projections based on lowest possible revenue brought in and also increased expenditures. I always flatline revenue and increase expenditures, kind of the trending rate, and also include any kind of bumps that I see or I've heard about possibilities of coming. So extremely conservative with the forecast, and then the spending plan, like I said, is just kind of giving you guys up to date as to where we're at with 3 months now of actuals from when the forecast was released. And I know there were some questions then about how the forecast looks different this year than in prior years, and I did provide the pool spending, this spreadsheet, the long legal one here. There's been questions, I know, about title funds and how they're spent. This specifically references how they're spent. Now, the percentages vary from building to building based on salary amounts and also like student counts. It's basically based on the needs of that building. But if you go all the way over to the far right and look at the total, those percentages on the far right are going to be the average amount, and it's this long one here. It's going to be the average amount of what is funding each and every little section that flows into the pool. The idea behind the pool was, because there's always been recommendations when I go through audits and things like that, be proactive with budgets. Try and be more proactive, constantly. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard the word proactive, I would be a rich man. So the idea behind this is to not only take general fund dollars and be proactive with that planning of spending them, but also take and steer grant funds, i.e. title and IDEA in here, and rolling them in. So looking at the total pot of needs and the total pot of revenue and making sure that a piece of each one of these sections, general fund dollars, Title I, and IDEA, touch everything instructional. This is only instructional, building level instructional items. This includes, as you go down the list, instructional salaries, which are teachers, personal attendants, classroom aides, and tutors. Their benefits includes instructional purchase services and instructional supplies. And in most cases, the large majority of these have been pushed down to the building level for discretionary budgets. So the building does have access to these funds to where they can basically plan around their specific needs. There's the support salaries, which includes instructional center aides, guidance counselors, and social workers, and their benefits. There are admin salaries in here, principals, deans, secretaries, and school directors, and their benefits. There's admin purchase services, admin supplies. Still instructional based. Everything is based around the instruction of the buildings. So when you look at each and every one of these line items, on average, it's like 91.3% is general fund. So say you take a dean's salary. 91.3% of that dean's salary is general fund. Then 5.44% is Title I. Then 3.29% is IDEA. It's all evenly, every instructional dollar that's spent, or every instructional cost is evenly cut with that percentage. And there is some variation if you look across. So like Admiral King, instead of it being, it's down about a percentage from the average. And that's based on their specific building needs. So I know that was some concern about whether or not, let me reiterate, like, specifically like a dean, an entire dean is paid for out of title funds. That's not accurate. They're in the pool, and there are percentage based of their salary is paid out of title funds, roughly 5%.
And that falls within the margin?
Yes, this is all factored in, so that when you see the total on here, we're actually trending better according to these transfers. When we initially did this estimate, being that this was kind of a whole new process, and let me reiterate or not even reiterate, but bring up the fact that this isn't something new. This isn't something that I came up with and then just arbitrarily passed it on. This is something Cincinnati's doing, public schools, and I even listed out a handful of other ones: Martins Ferry, Southeast Local, Alexander Local, Barnesville, and Bel Air, and those are just schools relatively. Cincinnati is much bigger than us, but the other schools are relatively our size. So it's the trend. It's something that the state is recommending go to, because obviously it's forcing you to look at dollar. You're looking at expenditures and making sure revenue is aligning to it. You're not, far too often when it came to grant funds, you get a dollar amount assigned to you in September or possibly sooner, and then you're trying to spend those dollars down, and it might not be directly aligned to what the general fund dollars were specifically earmarked for. So you've almost got two paths. This is taking those paths and merging them and making sure we're aligning every dollar to the same plan.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, number one, every school has a different allotment of funds based on their specific needs.
That is correct. It's going to be tied to not only student counts, but then specifically, like, if you look at social workers, a bigger school is going to maybe need 2 social workers, or secretaries. A bigger school might need an extra secretary. Those things are all factored in, and that's why you see some variations in the percentages.
So are we in compliance with the federal system for title funds?
100%.
The spending of title funds, we are in compliance.
100%.
And that's what the no findings indicates?
Well, the no findings, this would be in next year's audit, so I don't want to misspeak about that. But these are all things, I make sure, and that's kind of how I've always been, I will make sure when something like this, a major change like this, I will sit down with our state auditors and run it by them. And I got a great state audit team to the point to where they're going to tell me any concerns by any means. They had no concerns about this. They said, yes, other schools do it. It is absolutely 100% legal. And actually, they like it too, because obviously it steers them from having to almost look at 2 different channels. Because when they go through that, when they do an audit, they look at, amount of funds, purpose of spending, process of spending. They look at all this. So the idea that these two roads have kind of came together and how you're looking at spending, they appreciate it because the philosophies are the same on both.
I have a question, and forgive me because I'm having extreme difficulty reading this chart. It's a sign I'm getting old. But Josh, I have 2 questions for you. This year, 2018-19, how much is the district receiving this year in title funding, total amount?
That I do not have with me, but I will tell you that not every title dollar does go into this. There are
Okay, I just want to make a
specific,
comparison, because this is what I'm hearing. The title funding that we're receiving this year, a large portion of that money is being spent on dean services in the school building. So I just kind of want to really get a good idea or a picture of how much money is the district receiving in title funds, and how much of that money is being spent on administrative dean salaries.
I'll give you the total dollar amount. I will tell you, the large portion of title funds is within the pool.
I just want that.
Absolutely. But all, and every one of the dean's salaries is within the pool. There isn't other deans that are
I
outside of the
understand
pool.
that, I just wanted to.
So can you give us that information?
Absolutely.
Okay, what's the timeline?
I can go back tomorrow morning and send it right to you guys.
Okay, so if you could send it through the.
Because the other thing that lives, this is the summary page. So the other thing that lives within this is I can pull up Admiral King's specific pooling budget, and that's gonna show specifically the deans, principals, everybody that lives within those salaries. It'll show every teacher's salary within that specific budget. And then it will give you specific breakdowns. So I have no problem. I'll send you every single one of the pool breakdowns per building, and that will give you exactly that. That'll show you, the dean of whatever, General Johnny, and it'll show you specific dollars based on these percentages. And say $100,000, they would show you that $5,000 is title fees. It'll break it out like that.
At my request, if you could send that to this commission.
Absolutely.
And send it to the school board, that way they have eyes on it as well.
Absolutely.
And we can have a conversation.
Also, the teachers that are being paid out of title services and how that's impacting instruction as well. I'd like to do a comparison with the teachers that are paid for out of title services. We used to have pull-out services years ago.
So then, Claire, can you state that again?
Yes.
Getting people.
Can we also get a summary? I want to know the amount of money is being spent on teacher salaries as it relates to Title I funds.
Absolutely. It'll all be within that. No, it's 5% of everybody's salary instructional wise. So it'll all be within that breakdown. When I send you each of the building specific ones, it'll show it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The other piece, and just kind of give an update, state reimbursement for CEO's salary and benefits. I've been in contact for the last couple of weeks talking back and forth with Aaron Roush, who is the director for Office of Finance and Budget for the state. He reassured me this afternoon that full payment will be received by this Friday for the entire estimate for the entire year of 18-19 for salary, benefits, and any additional costs. That will be an estimate, but it'll still be, the true-up will happen at the end based on actual costs. So we'll look at, because I continue to send him quarterly true-ups, and so based on those quarterly true-ups, we'll look at what was advanced compared to actual costs and settle up at the end as well for any differentials.
So Lorain will not be on the hook for a nickel?
What was that?
Lorain will not be on the hook for a nickel of the money the state will reimburse?
Correct. Correct. And I mean, we did get 100% covered last year and actually carried over an additional amount of $10,000 based on their estimate for the final quarter was a little bit higher. So we did carry that amount over. We are getting the total amount less than 10,000, and then if there's an additional amount because they're looking at the overall. So they're looking at last year's total cost, this year's total cost, and how much we've been given. So nothing between years slips through or anything like that, and then they will make up the difference if there's a shortfall. If there is an overage that they might have advanced us too much, that will carry over to next year.
And that's in the MOU, that's part of the MOU?
That is directly referenced from the MOU. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. As we're transitioning, just as a quick reminder, to differentiate, just like we differentiate with our scholars and our students and our staff, we are going to put a link up on the projector. So if you want to take a picture of the link so you can access it later on. And what this does is for the folks who wanted to give public comment and for whatever reason you didn't want to come up or didn't have an opportunity, or for the people who are at home working the second or the third shift, taking care of kids and so forth, we understand that. We want to empower everybody in this community to have a voice. We might not agree with every voice, or we might agree with every voice, but the opportunity for you to speak and speak on behalf of Lorain Proud, I think that's a good thing. So the link is a video link where you just log in, basically just click the video button and speak your piece for 3 minutes. But we ask that you're kind, just like you were here, and be respectful of each other. And the videos will be moderated, obviously, so if somebody does something inappropriate, that will come down so that way everybody's not exposed to that. Just as a quick reminder, there's the link, and we'll transition into the next thing, and it's called Flip Grid. So we'll transition into the next part of the agenda, and that's the managerial updates. Mr. Hardy, please.
Sorry, brief technical difficulty. Good evening, all. I have a presentation, obviously, I will share in great detail. However, at the same time, I want to recognize the voices, the comments, the emotions and feelings that were in this room and continue to be in this room, and recognize and empathize with those feelings for many, many reasons. One, I don't think any comment made tonight was coming from a place of hurt or hate or otherwise. I think it comes from a place of care, a place of wanting better, a place of compassion for what we can and will continue to do for kids. I also see this as an opportunity, as Ms. Johnson has spoken to, is for us to come together and think about a forward path that will allow us to accomplish our common goal, and that's educating our young. To commission members, I thank you for the space and the time to comment. To our new commission members, Mrs. Zander and Dr. Sampson, I appreciate the time and the continued dialogue around what we need to do, and for that reason, I will spend some time recapping a little bit of where we've been, the challenge we have seen in the past, what we're currently seeing, and then therefore charting a path forward. But before I begin those specific comments, I listen very intently to our young people on a daily basis, including tonight. And there was Ryan, one of our young men, I think he's still here, asked a very powerful question. What is our end game? And so I think about end game, and I think about, instantly my mind went to my aunt, who's one of my mom's 7 sisters, who spends hours now as a retired teacher of 32 years, looking at our lineage and looking at our heritage and looking at all the things that happened in our lifetime and in our past, and trying to connect the dots. And as you know, and as you can see, as an African American male, that is not easy. Our lineage is broken. Our history is not complete. And so as I sit there and listen to my aunt try to piece this together, it's hard for her to find out how all these pieces come together, but it's with her passion and pride that she's trying to find those answers. And then one day I had a chance to speak to her and ask her just exactly what her end game was. Her answer to me was she wanted to make sure that the next generation was better off than the previous one. That's what I hear from this audience tonight. That you too want what's best for the next generation. And so, Ryan, to answer your question, as I think about the unbelievable amount of love and care that I had being the oldest grandson, the first male grandchild in our family, and the opportunities my grandparents and family members provided for me to see the world, to experience some of the best education in this country, I'm humbled to sit here in front of you to say that I have seen things that I ultimately really just want you to see too. think there's a world out there that we all can benefit from. There's a world our kids can experience if we give them the chance to do so. And I think at times we allow adults and adult politics to get in the way, but I also get why, because of the emotions and the challenges that legislation has put in front of us. I recognize those challenges, but I also recognize there's an opportunity for our kids' endgame to be something better than our own. So with that said, I would like to talk about our path towards that future. Talk about how we can get to a place of ensuring that that road that you see in front of you right now is leading our kids to a place that they may not even be able to imagine right now. When you think about the great thinkers that have ever lived in this world, they saw something that others did not. You think of Steve Jobs, you think of the iPhone, no one thought that was even possible. When you think about how people were imagining living in space, people didn't think that was possible. And I think the same picture indicates that what we can see, what is possible for our kids, is something that is out far in the distance. It is our job as educators and adults to provide them that pathway. The pathway that we started, and the approach and philosophy behind the direction we wanted to go, and again, recapping a little bit of this for our new commissioners, year one was a lot about establishing organizational culture. When I walked into Lorain, I was met with a whole bunch of different emotions, similar to the emotions tonight. Underneath those emotions are some real realities that live within district office and otherwise that were incomplete, were unfair, and conflicting with each other, that needed to be improved. In addition to that, there were schools in which school leaders and otherwise needed to be improved. And so the first year was really creating that organization strategy, improving our school leadership teams, which I think we have extended countless hours to finding the right people. And we truly believe in every one of our buildings we do have the right leaders leading the charge. In year two, we moved to thinking about shared expectations and what does it mean to raise the bar to ensure our kids get everything that they ultimately deserve and desire in life. And that comes through making very tough decisions around what excellence looks like. We're in the middle of that now. We're in the middle of trying to figure that out, and we're in the middle of that struggle, and that is okay. It's very natural for moments of transition through transformation and otherwise, where there are moments where conflict happens. And that conflict will result to improving our practice, improving our direction as we collectively work together. In year three and beyond, you can see the shift being towards focusing more deeply on instruction, more deeply on creating the mindset that will ultimately create the outcomes we want to see, so that by year four, we're in a space where things become so strong, so repetitive, and so consistent that we will impress ourselves on how far we have come together. So as you think about these phases of transformation, I just outlined those to you so you understand behind the scenes, behind all the things that are happening, the philosophy that drives the current thinking. However, when coming into a new space, I also realized that doesn't just happen. You have to understand what's going on. You have to spend time learning a community. You have to spend time understanding the financial pieces, the operational pieces, the managerial and instructional pieces before you make actual decisions. The next slide I will show you are just a list or a subset of challenges under the operational and managerial and instructional pieces that occur, that we have seen. And this again is not an indictment of anyone's wrongdoing, and it's just the reality of what I saw through my eyes. We may differ on what those things are, but again, from my lens, from what I saw, I think it's only fair to share the challenges that we faced. Again, the subset of the challenges that we see. So in year one, I won't go over all of these. However, this PowerPoint will be on the website so that you can actually see them. But there were a number of things that were challenging. When you come into a new situation, you always think about where is the money? You think about how is the money spent? Is it allocated towards kids? Is it allocated to make sure that the education that our kids are being provided is strong? And what I saw, there were a lot of expenditures aligned to curricular resources. In some cases, the varying level of effectiveness could be debated. But we were locked into contracts for thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of resources that no one was using. So if you can imagine walking to the door in August and seeing that you have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in something that no one can use, you're already behind the eight ball. In addition, we found that, through the proactive nature in which Josh has always operated as treasurer in our strategic and innovation office, he didn't have the backing necessary to push forward an initiative to make us a better planning organization around our finances. Through his leadership, through his team's leadership, he has spent a significant amount of time improving the way that we approach finances. Also walking in the door in August, I think it was mid-August, I remember sitting in a meeting and hearing about our healthcare costs across the district. We were in the hole for almost $680,000 in back healthcare costs. Without an answer, without a direction, without an understanding of where that money was coming from or where we were going to get the resources necessary to overcome that hurdle. Again, through Josh and through other leaders throughout the district, we found a way to get out of that situation, but realizing we had a hole to fill. In addition to other operational pieces, some of which we have spoken to and a lot of which lives in the tension in this room right now, House Bill 70, for many, many legitimate reasons, was seen as the evil empire. Was seen as something that was going to create something opposite of what is intended. And I don't disagree with that. What I do believe is that the intent was right. However, the elements that were built into it were off. And I say that to you when you come into a situation and you believe you're coming in to create the change and the perception that is already being received about the House bill and yourself, puts you in a place of deficit. It makes it challenging for anyone to overcome it. On the managerial side, we saw that there were a few very clear things that were challenging. One, and I don't think there was any fault behind how we were staffing or how we were holding individuals accountable, but there just wasn't an accountability system put in place for district leaders. Wow. There wasn't accountability systems placed in high effect for our school leaders. And for that reason, we had to change that. We had to improve that. I also saw a large number of school leaders that were absent in year one. A lot of money was spent on substitute administrators. First time I had ever heard of that, actually, where there were substitutes for administrators who were out of the building. And for that reason, I said we have to also address that challenge as well. The last piece here, the last dollar sign on the managerial column, you'll see that in that first year, we paid over $641,000 in supplementals to our educators. Again, if you add this all up, this is well over $1.3 million spent on elements of educating our kids that was not directly impacting our kids to the level that it should have been. When we look at the instructional column, and out of all the pieces and all the challenges we faced from the operational and managerial side, we had to figure out the real challenges of instructing our kids. 75% of our kids were reading below grade level. 99% of our kids, according to state standards, were not ready for college. 93% of our kids that went off to LCCC after high school, who were not a part of our dual enrolled or early college programs, 93% of them had to take remedial math or English. In addition to high suspension rates, in addition to low scholar attendance rates, and the list goes on and on for years. So after you think about all of these challenges, again, I tried to list some basic ones. Now, there are day-to-day challenges that come up every single day. There are conversations that I have with individuals who are working in our office, working in our school buildings tirelessly, and they are new challenges on a daily basis that are presented. I didn't want to put them here because I wanted just to provide a higher level look at the challenges year one that were faced. After year one, there were some high level accomplishments. You will see that through my conversation so far with you all, I have indicated a reduction in central office costs. We also spent significantly less on how we were funding certain initiatives that were ineffective. We also spent time to ensure that we closed an ineffective and underperforming school building in MBA and moving that to Success Academy, while also finding new ways to provide additional funding to our school through a $1 million matching grant through Breakthrough Results Fund, which provided new resources and more complete resources through a national organization that is helping to improve our instructional outcomes. The list can go on and on around the things that we have done to increase opportunities for not only savings, but opportunities to align our financial well-being to the things that matter the most, and that is to our teachers and to our kids. On the managerial side, we did move ineffective district and school leadership. We had to reorganize, we had to get better. It was very clear that there were some functions and other offices that just were not working for what we needed to do. We made the changes that were necessary. We moved forward to finding strong, nationally recognized district leaders that understand the landscape of education across the country. We also spent a significant amount of time finding school leaders who can and will lead us towards excellence and have done a tremendous job in their first year in their buildings in pushing the education for our kids forward. We also spent a lot of time thinking about how do we continue to get better as adults, from the teacher's lens, from the district lens, and otherwise. On the instructional side, on the first year, we spent a lot of time thinking about school leadership professional development, where our school leaders went through a number of professional learning opportunities through the summer in preparation for this year. We brought pre-K programs to all of our elementary school buildings across the district, as we know the importance of starting young. We spent time thinking about the shared expectations that we need for all of our teachers, scholars, leaders, and district administrators across the board. So year one, again, was about improving school and district leadership. Year two was about improving expectations for the quality of educational practice in all our buildings. And as we look at year three, it's about how do we improve all of our schools across the board with the correct supports. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later. Based on year two, we started to see some of these accomplishments pay off. Again, finding continued ways to reduce our footprint from the central office standpoint of things, reducing costs where we can around supplements, as Josh has alluded to and spoken to, around the clean financial standing that we stand in right now because of the work of him and his team. We eliminated school leader substitute costs, and then on top of that found additional ways to continue growing the amount of resources that come into our district through additional grants that we have been provided throughout the year. From the managerial lens, there was a parent or two that referred to the start or the launch of our Parent Advisory Council, which I believe has been renamed to Family Action Network at this point, and we're looking to see that to continue to grow. I will be the first to say that we could have done a better job in year one or following through with a number of things year one, and I think through this reignited approach, in year two I'm excited for what Family Action Network can do. We've also spent a considerable amount of time listening to community members, listening sessions with teachers. We had a number of chief chats that led a lot of those listening sessions with teachers at school sites throughout this year, while I also just recently started to re-engage more deeply with teachers through listening sessions over the past few weeks in response to a call for more interaction. On the instructional side, as you can see, year one versus year two, there have been additional improvements, things that are getting better, things that this community wants to see for our kids. It's unofficial at this point, and there's more data to come out around our state report card in a few months, but we're anticipating an increase in our 4-year graduation rate. We're also anticipating an increase in our 5-year graduation rate, and we'll be excited to share that information as we get closer to the release of that state report card, and we anticipate growth there. We also have seen, and it's been spoken to by a few individuals tonight, an increase in the number of standards-driven lessons. So for those in the audience, when we think about the performance of our kids, it's based on what the state puts in front of us and tells us is important. So whatever those standards are, we need to teach. And over the course of this year, we've seen an increase from 17% to 37% across our district. Today was also a very proud day for those in Lorain High, especially our Early College Academy. There was the signing day held today for our kids that are now receiving or will receive their associate's degree. And we've increased the number of scholars who will receive their associate's degree by 52%. We understand for that to continue to grow that we have to spend more and more time and energy looking at our preschool programs. So by expanding our preschool programs across 10 schools, We're spending more time and energy on educating our kids early. 75%, there has been a 75% increase in the number of programs in Lorain City Schools that have received a 5 out of 5 star rating on the Ohio State Step Up to Quality program. 75% increase. We also realize though, and again, these are projected because there's still work to be done this year. It has been brought up many times, and I will speak to this more specifically when I speak to what has been coming out of our listening sessions. However, I want to note that it is our goal this year to improve the curricular resources for our teachers and their school teams in the 2019-2020 school year. We understand they're outdated. We understand they need to be improved, and that is a goal of ours. We also heard a lot about suspension and violent behaviors. I will be clear that I do not condone them, and I do not believe that is a representation of this audience, or more importantly, of this school district. However, we have spent dedicated hours of time, school leaders and teachers alike, trying to find ways to make sure our kids come to school every single day, continue to make the right choices. For those who don't, there are also consequences. So with that said, there has been a district-wide reduction in suspensions, while also an increased accountability for violent behaviors. So if you think about it, we're looking to find ways to make sure our kids are in school, but for those individuals who choose not to do the right thing, we have increased our consequences to those individuals and have expelled more scholars this year than we have in the entirety of last year. And so when we think about that, it's not a positive statistic in many ways. Actually, let me stand corrected. Through the first 3 quarters of this year, we've expelled more individuals from school for their violent behaviors than we have during the first 3 quarters of the past year. And that is a reality of realizing that we cannot condone those behaviors in our buildings, but more importantly, we will also recognize that we have to deal with them as they do come up. And last but definitely not least, I want to make a mention to the young people that we saw earlier today from Longfellow Middle. I had a chance to see them, perform and for them to compete at Lorain High a few weeks ago. I bring my son, my oldest son, with me everywhere. My youngest son can't sit still yet. But my oldest son is intrigued by anything new. And it was unbelievable to see his eyes light up to seeing these robots move across the floor for the first time, and him curious and wondering how that happened. And seeing the young scholars from Longfellow Middle being the role model for him was not only impressive, but something that I'm sure my son has been lucky to be in the presence of because of their greatness. And that greatness only happens because they have great teachers who have empowered them and made them great, that have put them in a space to be successful in robotics, while also realizing that they have the potential to do whatever they can in this world. And it shouldn't be the last goal, it should be the first, but the fact that they're going back to Worlds again for a second year is truly amazing. Can we give them a round of applause? So as we think about all of those things, right? So all the challenges, all of the high-level accomplishments, there was still this moment in the middle of the year where there was a lot of concern from the community. And our administration takes your feedback and your comments very seriously. And for those that went to the last town hall, I did outline those for you. But again, for the commission members who are new, I want to make sure that they also hear some of the concerns we heard that night. One of which was making sure that whatever curriculum we put in front of our kids that is relevant and is challenging. And so to that point, we will make sure this upcoming year, we're starting with selecting new elementary ELA materials in the early grades, while also selecting new middle school math curriculum for the 2019-2020 school year. There have been task force teams that are already engaged deeply in this process and spending a significant amount of time selecting the right materials, but I will refer to that a little bit more based on a listening session I had just yesterday. Get families involved and engaged was something that came out prominently. We are reinitiating the Parent Advisory Committee, again, Family Action Network as it has been renamed. But again, that is a priority. We heard you and we're doing something about it. Improve the morale of teachers. I cannot agree more. I think that is a huge priority for our administration. And trying to figure out how best to go about it is something we're focusing on. So thinking about how we celebrate our teachers and staff, we spent this year recognizing our teachers through recognition dinners, but we still need to do more. We need to figure out how to celebrate all the great things that happen every single day with our teachers and our leaders in our schools and classrooms. We relaunched our engagement survey so that we can get more targeted feedback. One of the pieces of feedback we received that it was too restrictive. When you first filled out that survey, it provided way too many questions that asked you who you were, what you're doing, so on and so forth. So we just sent it out as a link to all, so they had a chance to review the questions without the fear of retaliation or other things that may come into folks' minds as they think about it and try to complete it. And for that reason, we've seen an uptick in those that have now completed the survey. We have now 259 individuals across the district that have completed the survey, which is about 29%. Last year, this time, only 16% of individuals completed the survey. So we appreciate the initial or the additional feedback that we have received, and again, things that we can act on. Travel to Cleveland was too far for folks, and for many concerns around transportation and otherwise, even though there was a scholar or two that has told me that they were excited about that opportunity. At the same time, I want to recognize and make sure that all family members can get to where they want to be to celebrate this special day with kids. So moving into Lorain County to a larger space that's indoors, so we do not have to worry about weather or otherwise, will allow us all to experience something great with our kids. And the uncertainty of what is coming creates a challenge. And so I will speak to a little bit more of that right now. Over the next 2 years, the idea is to first support our high school more deeply, and I know Mr. Garvey and his leadership team, along with all of their wonderful teachers, have spent significant amount of time working in smaller groups, identifying their biggest challenges and their needs, and have spent, I believe it was last Tuesday, during the earlier dismissal day, really diving into the challenges and coming with solutions to improve the high school. As I mentioned earlier, improving English, language arts, and math curriculum is a priority. And over the next 12 months, just thinking more deeply with teachers on how we can continue to develop the autonomies necessary for schools to be successful, so that we ultimately have a school turnaround model that will show the state, despite the challenges that they have put in front of us, that we can and will rise. The next piece that was in the last slide at our last town hall was just listening to you. I heard that often from teachers and leaders alike, of just spending time to listen, right? The pace in which we operate and the pace in which we have to work, given the constraints of the House Bill 70, given the reality that a contract of mine is only 3 years, the push to get results is challenging. At the same time, there are people that are working in our schools, in our classrooms, that I feel that I needed to do a better job. I need to do a better job in general, speaking and listening to. So over the last few weeks since that town hall, I spent time with teachers who were open to meeting with me after school, and some that were able to meet with me at lunch to talk a lot about the challenges they're also seeing. So it's broken down into a 4-step process for me in thinking about how do we identify the problems and share those problems with teachers, speak with teachers to identify solutions, then ultimately get an opportunity to get some feedback from teachers before we implement. And over the past few weeks, we spent just time on the first 2 steps. And here's what's come out of those conversations to this point with teachers. We have to find a way to address attendance. Attendance is a big problem if we can't educate our kids if they don't come to school. We have to find a way to ensure that our kids come to school, they have the resources that they need to be successful, and that we operate with that sense of urgency, but it starts with first our kids coming to school. Second piece was around professional learning for teachers and leaders, and I think I heard from the Teachers Union president who spoke about the idea of professional collaboration days. The intent is still to be professional collaboration days. Did they fall short? Absolutely, and we will improve them. The intent for us going into the next year, when you look at the school calendar, is to ensure that there is more time dedicated for collaboration. One of the things that I heard from teachers in this listening tour is they don't necessarily need more professional learning, they just might need time with each other. So they can plan, so they can work vertically across grade levels, so they can work horizontally across grades, and spend more time thinking about how to make instruction in their school and their buildings across the district stronger for all. Another comment came up around special education and how we are working to improve that. Special education itself is a long conversation because of the challenges that we have seen historically in special education, but more importantly, the growing number of kids that have been identified with IEP. So I heard that from teachers for us to address that directly and have more conversations on what we need to do to provide better and more complete supports for our special ed scholars. Curriculum resources was a hot button topic in all three of the most recent listening sessions. There were comments from teachers who said they haven't had their curricular resources updated since the first Bush was in office. So when you think about the years and years of under-resourced classrooms, the lack of textbooks that stem past the past 12, 14, 15 years, that's a challenge. That's a problem. We have to do better. Standard-based grading was also a hot-button topic around how we approach it, and I think the feedback provided on how we can improve it was strong. I think there was good dialogue on what we could do to ensure that we're still ensuring that we're aligning our instruction to standards while also communicating with parents and having the understanding of how to communicate with parents around standards-based grading more completely. Wraparound services was also a topic that was brought up when we were talking about our young people who experience trauma and bring trauma to classrooms and recognize the impact that has on our young people as they come into school. And the last three spoke again to parent involvement, overall our scholar behavior in classrooms and how we support our kids more completely around their behavior choices, and ultimately make sure that they're successful in doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Lastly was technology. We rolled out an approach to get actually all of our middle and high school young people technology, laptops and otherwise, and that hasn't been successful in many classrooms in many schools. And what I've heard from teachers is that they would rather have carts in each of their rooms so that they can have access to computers every single day while keeping those computers in their classrooms every single day charged and ready to go. I tried to bucket these into 9, but again, there were a ton of very rich and important conversations that I appreciated, and thank all the teachers that came to many of the different conversations around this, but I feel these were the biggest and most prominent 9. But I don't want to shortchange, there were other conversations around things that we need to improve that we are not losing sight of, but more importantly, will be embedded in these conversations around these 9. With that said, as we move to the last 2 steps of this process and listening to more input around our decisions and solutions and implementing those solutions, we're going to engage in a series of focus groups on many of those topics. So now that we've identified these topics, we've identified 10 different focus groups for teachers to opt into and provide us direction on how we should approach improving in these areas. So when we think about professional development, teachers, we want those that are passionate around improving professional development, professional learning, to come to the table and help us build that out. Help us think about what that should look like for you so that we can roll out something that you want and will ultimately be successful with. Same thing for special education. What does that look like to deliver the right services for all of our kids when they need it? What do we need to do differently as we go into 2019-2020? Standards-based grading, I mentioned. School culture and climate is a topic that we'll continue to do and talk about. Career advancement has come up in a couple of different ways, which I thought was interesting. There are teachers who, so many of our teachers obviously do a tremendous job, but also are looking for ways to continue to grow, so they continue to reach their full potential. So we want to find time and space to listen to our teachers around how we make them even more complete educators, and listening to you on what you need specifically to advance your career. As we think about shared expectations, I alluded to the launch of that at the beginning of this year and trying to find a way to level set how we approach the work. We realized we missed, and we have to get better. And we have to find a way to improve the way that we approach our expectations within classrooms and from our leaders. Our Excellent Schools dashboard, or our big board that is referred to, will be revamping to align those key performance indicators to the things that matter the most, while also addressing behavior and safety throughout all of our schools, which we heard and spoke to a lot tonight, because I think that it's vitally important for all of our kids to come to a safe space, to feel very comfortable in learning in a space where they can be successful. These focus groups will launch in a couple of weeks after spring break, after we have a chance to get away from things and come back to conversations that teachers, we hope that you engage in so that we can support you in developing the experiences you want to have as you lead excellent classrooms going into next year. next year. So, just to give you immediate next steps, focus groups will be held in April, and selected solutions will be announced at the April Town Hall. So again, your feedback will be important for us identifying those solutions and ensuring that we communicate outwardly to you around how we will approach this, so that we have the last 3 or 4 months to continue, 3 or 4 weeks, to provide opportunities for teachers to hear and see what is being rolled out for the following year. I will always be open to and will continue to have conversations with teachers, staff, and school board members throughout the spring, so that we can continue to figure out that way to collaborate, way to come together and create everything that has been identified together. And then our district team, which again I cannot speak more highly of given the challenges we face collectively as a community, collectively on a day-to-day basis. I commend them for all the work that they do in an attempt to improve the outcomes for kids. And that's not only district leaders, that is school leaders, that is our teachers. We thank you for the work that you put in every single day. And as we work hard together, we can be prepared for the 2019-2020 school year. So that ultimately, this picture here, which was a picture from today, a group of young people, when we think about the end game, a group of young people signing that their future just is becoming a little bit brighter because of the hard work that they put in. And behind those individuals, literally, is Ms. Haney, who leads that program, but behind them are some teachers you can see in the back. You will also see teachers that are in classrooms teaching that have set these young people up for greatness. Now, last year, this time, that table had only 4 young people around that table who were receiving an associate's degree that were at the high school. This year, that number's up to 20. And so, if we continue to grow in this path and in this way, we will find more and more kids being successful because of the excellent leaders and teachers in each of our buildings. Dr. Sampson, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Commission members, questions about the presentation, comment, feedback at this moment?
Yes, I have some questions and would like
Give
some
the floor
feedback.
to Ms. Zander.
Yes, I'm going to reference the data collection I've done over the past 2.5 months and looking at the presentation, and I'm really concerned when we point out the fact that we need the right leaders in each of our buildings and that we don't see any problems here with the current leadership at the buildings. My data tells me that there's some deep concern by the teachers that it's not all the buildings, but there's a large number of buildings that have concerns about the leadership and the principals and the deans that are assigned to those buildings and the lack of experience. Can you talk about that at all?
Could you rephrase your question one more time?
Sure. I want a little bit of feedback from you as far as the concern from 88% of the teachers in this district that are concerned about the building leadership and support in their buildings currently, and the lack of experience, the lack of support that the teachers feel. I just wanted some feedback and input from you as far as that's concerned.
Sure.
It's a big issue for me.
I appreciate your comment. I think there are a few things that are true. I think in any moment of transition or transformation, there is a period of time in which relationships are built. And in the first year of any relationship, there are going to be rocky moments. And I will not ignore that there have been rocky moments between teachers and school leaders. However, I am more confident today than I was yesterday. And I will be more confident tomorrow than I am today that we have the right school leaders creating the transformation. And I fundamentally stand behind that for a few reasons. There are so many things that I think our school leaders see on a day-to-day basis that no one around this table can speak to as well as they can. I think they wake up every single day and put their heartfelt efforts into doing what's right by kids. And ultimately, that's all I can ask for. For those situations where we can improve, and if there is documentation, Mrs. Zander, that you would like to share with me that indicates that challenge, I would appreciate it.
Is this documentation from the, what is it, the TNTP
No, I did a survey myself. I interviewed, or I got a survey responses from 332 teachers, and I'll be happy to share that information as well.
Excellent. I've not seen that survey, so
I
that'd
would
be
be happy to
great.
share it with you.
What tool was that survey from? Is
It
that
was
something-
questions that I generated.
Something you created?
Yes.
Self-created?
Yes. And I'll be happy to share that tool with you.
Excellent.
Also, I'm going to refer to page 4 on challenges faced. You reference 99% of our kids are not ready for college. Could you share with me the formula you used to come up with 99% and what that actually means?
Sure. It wasn't a formula. If you go to the state report card and you look at the indicators within the state report card, you'll see college and career readiness as an indicator of how our kids are performing, and it indicates that 1% of our kids are college and career ready, again by state standard. And therefore,
Is that last year's current data, or is that 2 years in the rears?
that is what is on our current report card, yes.
And then,
2018.
Correct.
and then 93.3% of non-dual enrolled scholars had to take remedial math or English classes at LCC. I just would like to know how you can meet that percentage as well.
Sure. So in contact with our partners at LCCC, they were able to provide me data of all of our scholars that have matriculated from high school on to LCCC and have taken courses there that were not part of the dual enrollment program. And that goes
So they never took a CCP course at high school, they just went on to take straight to college after
high school.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Getting back to, and this is just a comment.
What page, I'm sorry?
I'm at page 7, level 2. The increased parent participation relaunch, the Family Action Network, I still think that there's some serious work that needs to be done in this area. You know, I talk to parents continuously, and they're very concerned. We heard concerns tonight that we're not anywhere near where we should be as far as parent involvement is concerned.
Completely agree.
Increased accountability for violent behaviors and consistent and upheld consequences. I think that there has been a trend, an uprise of violent behaviors in the building, because the feedback that I've received is the students, some students feel like they can kind of overrun the buildings, that the teachers and the overall administration are not controlling things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. I think that maybe this year we were a little late on starting that discipline. It needs to happen early on, and I think that's why we kind of created an increase of violent outbursts throughout the buildings this school year. And again, this is feedback that I'm getting from the teachers, and I'll be happy to share that with you as well.
I think what is also very true, and I appreciate that, I don't disagree with what you're saying. We've also spent a significant amount of time with the police department and looking at the trends across the city. We have also seen a rise, and this was, I think, a town hall or 2 ago. We have seen a rise in South Side versus West Side challenges again, so it seems to be cyclical, like there's a wave to it, and there's been an increased number of individuals who have engaged in that. Not to say that's the only reason why we've seen that, but we've seen that as a result of a large number of instances. For example, there was an incident that happened, I want to say in the fall, that happened outside of school related to that rivalry. And as a result of that, it was brought to our school. Individuals brought that energy and attention there, and we have seen because of that additional young people gravitating to that. And I say that only to point out that it is something we additionally also are concerned about and have a very, very high level of concern. And we're looking for ways to reduce that, and over the past few months we have seen a reduction.
Do we have currently an SRO assigned to the district?
So we have not only an SRO, we also have a former police officer as the head of our security.
And who is our SRO that's assigned to Lorain City Schools?
Mr. Hawks?
He just said no.
The SRO. The SRO.
Who is our SRO that's assigned to Lorain City Schools?
He just told me we didn't have.
At this time, we don't have.
Why?
So I apologize.
So there is no SRO?
No.
The individual that was our SRO had a accident, and therefore, due to the nature of the Lorain Police Department being short, we made an agreement that they could just hold off. That way it helps, because the Lorain Police Department, I believe, is like 22 officers short. So right
But that was a choice on the school district, not on the police department.
Okay, and then I just want to make a comment about robotics because I love robotics and I love STEM education for children. I got to see the robotics team also present at the board meeting in February. And I just would like to see more equity across the district. I'd like to see robotics be offered to Southview Middle School students and to General Johnny Wilson students and give equity access to all of our middle school kids. So they can And then lastly, I'm just going to reference the information about the curriculum because this has been a concern that's been brought to my attention since day one. It's really disheartening to me that we are in year 2 and we are not providing teachers with the necessary curriculum needed to teach. So I think that this needs to be an urgent matter that's handled immediately. Year 2, under HB 70, to raise test scores, to raise student outcomes, and to still be in a place almost 2 years later to not have the necessary textbooks, materials, resources to be effective teachers. I think that's very disheartening.
So you share with us a specific, if you have that available, a specific timeline. I know you guys are talking about the curriculum realignment, new middle school math curriculum, and ELA for elementary. Is there a specific timeline to have a new curriculum in place to replace the stuff from pushing on?
Yeah. So yes, so Mrs. Andrew, you're absolutely right. I think the curriculum needs to be improved. This has been a challenge, as I mentioned earlier, for years, right? So, teachers brought to my attention over the past few weeks. Last time they saw curriculum adoption was 2003, 2004.
Right.
And that's not okay. I think you and I will both agree as educators, it's just not okay for our teachers to not have the necessary resources.
Right.
So as far as middle school math, I know there is a task force meeting tomorrow, their second of which, in which they're looking at and identifying materials. And I will say, for those that provided feedback yesterday around their experience on the first round with the math curriculum, they presented the challenge that they received very few choices and they wanted more time and wanted to expand on the resources out there. That's what they're going to do tomorrow.
And teachers are included in this selection process of curriculum?
Purely run by teachers. There's only one district administrator, I think maybe 2 just to be there as a support to have the conversation, but it's all teachers that have been either invited or asked to be a part of it at this point. And to that point, their feedback to me yesterday I thought was spot on. They felt they were given 3 options and one might have been okay, but again, they only got 3. So we had to get, they want more time to explore.
And we have to keep in mind too, with any curriculum implementation process, we need to have ample time to train teachers effectively how to utilize the curriculum. So I hope that those timelines will be established with effective teacher training as well.
Yes, and I think for the task force that I had mentioned on page, let's see here. Towards the end, the task force there, there it is. I don't think that's a slide number, but the committee name and those individual conversations that you see there's a very specific conversation around professional development, professional learning. We're hoping that teachers will come to that conversation and let us know exactly what they need and help us build a timeline that makes sense for them so that they can be successful in implementing any new curriculum that we bring to the district.
One quick question for you, Mr. Hardy. So you mentioned the 2018 graduation rate is in arrears, correct? Is that how it works?
That's right.
So if you can explain what in arrears mean, and then my second question will be, if you could explain that first, then my second question will be about the 2019 graduation rate.
Sure thing. So when we look at, on the state report card, we're given a 4-year graduation rate and a 5-year graduation rate. And our current report card for 2018, the one that you can see online right now, indicates a 4-year graduation rate of our kids that were in our school the year prior, the prior year's graduation. So it's a year later that we see the results posted on our report card. For a 5-year graduation rate, it's 2 years, right? So if you look at 2019 right now, as we're looking to ensure that our kids are graduating on time this year, those young people that are a part of that graduating cohort will not be reflected in this upcoming report card. They'll be a year in the future because of the way that the state calculates it. And so therefore, what we will see on this year's report card is our 5-year graduation rate, which is our last year's graduates, and our 4-year graduates that would incorporate this year's graduates. So in short, it's a little bit complicated to understand, but if you can just imagine that whatever current year we're in, that won't be reflected until a year later. Then to your second part of your question around this year's graduation rate, we actually have a graduation meeting today. We have them, at this point, we're having them weekly to make sure that our kids are going into the right direction for graduation this year. And through the leadership of Mr. Garvey, Ms. LaPorchek, they have created, and Mrs. Haney, who was at the meeting as well, they have created an unbelievably strong system to identify not only the young people that are on track to graduate based on grades, but also on all the state requirements. And for those that are not, there's a plan for each one of them. And for those that we have lost because they either, given our transient population or out of the district or otherwise, we obviously can't do much about, but we're also trying to research on where are they, so that we at least know how they're being accounted for, because ultimately, any 9th grader that walks into our building becomes part of our cohort as soon as they are a 9th grader. So 4 years later, we're still accountable for kids that may not actually be in our district. So it's only right that we know where they are and understand how they're performing as best as we can. So long-winded way of saying there is a strong system put in place. There's weekly meetings to discuss current graduates and the challenges and shortcomings that we may have. And ultimately, we should see, again, additional increases in graduation over the next year.
And I could not emphasize more on this Family Action Network that we need to have a strategic and purposeful and meaningful rollout. This has happened once where it's been botched, and I don't think we'll get another opportunity to engage our families and community again in a meaningful way. So I would really like to see what the strategy is going to be, who's going to do what, when, where, how. So it's very clear in how we're engaging the parents so that they can start driving some of this as well, and owning, rather than administrators or folks in the district telling them, and actually being sincere about what it is that they want and implement some of that stuff.
Indeed, we'll follow up with that strategic plan in more direction as we have pulled more information together. I think not only our Chief Family Officer, Ms. Prass has done a tremendous job with her team, Mr. Krusky and Mr. Demney leading the charge in many ways to ensure that this work is done right. We most recently sent out a survey to family members to indicate not only when they're able to meet, when they're most available to meet, asking them questions around what school their kids attend, who do they represent, meaning are they a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, otherwise, topics in which they're interested in addition to finding ways to bringing those topics to the community, and open-ended questions around just concerns that came from the Titan Family Action Network. And again, that list of challenges expands to almost 3 pages of comment that will allow us to address them one by one to figure out how to best approach this over time. So this initial survey is a big driver, a data point that we ultimately can share, and I believe it may even be posted. If not, we will post it publicly on our website. But nonetheless, it's an indicator of what we need to do and how we need to approach engaging our families. But we appreciate the push.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Hardy?
I would just want to clarify with the SRO piece, going back to that. Who made the determination? Was it the police department that said we are not going to provide an SRO? Or was it the school system saying we don't need an SRO? I just want to have that clarified for me, please.
Due to the nature of I don't need to go into specifics what happened to that individual. That's a department issue. We work together continuously right now, along with, as everybody knows, Ruben, and we work very closely with the police department. They have responded by anything that we need them throughout the district. So as this time, we're working cooperatively because of the shortage that the city has along,
So
with us.
we've asked the police department for an SRO, and they said we don't have enough
No,
manpower.
we have not asked them. We have a meeting, I believe, Friday, with the chief. We have conversations going on. That's a decision that we would have to sit down with the chief and Mr. Hardy.
Chief wants to work.
How long have we not had an SRO at Lorain High School? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know the exact date that that individual had that accident. About a month, I would say. About a month, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Will there be some follow-up on this for the commission about the situation? Because safety and security is paramount, especially at the high school level. Will there be some follow-up as to the progress on this? I know there's some sensitive information when it relates to the police force and some of the things that they do, so we don't want to infringe on that. But as it relates to the school system, the school district, can we have some follow-up information on that, please? At some time when available, not right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Any additional comments? Okay. So I'm going to move the agenda on to my updates, and one of the key updates that I have to face head on is this this update where we have to create a level of accountability. At this moment, there is unbridled power that comes from the HB 70 directly to the CEO. And we want to have local voice and choice. And I've said that many times, and I'll say it publicly again in case you didn't hear me in individual conversations. Our local school board needs to be involved in this as well. And so we'll have that conversation when we get to it. There's been lots of fences that needs to be mended, correct?
Yes.
And so we will do that in due time, as long as I'm here. My goal is to make sure that we have a full functioning city. Brother against brother is not going to work. So we are going to work together, and I will do my best to work with the local school board and the associations and this commission and parents, as well as with folks at the state level. Okay? Because our teachers are way too important with our students. So with that said, one of the components that I have to get done is this level of accountability and creating an evaluation system for the CEO. Upon my arrival 2 weeks ago, my question was, where's the evaluation of the CEO from his first 30 days?
Like the superintendent.
Non-existent. Where is the 60-day evaluation? Non-existent. 90 days, 180 days, and so forth. So you guys get the point. You guys live it. I was shocked, to say the least, that system was not in place. Now, here's the challenge. If we hire a teacher and arbitrarily gave that teacher an up or down vote right now at the end of the school year, and that teacher has to go home and speak to their family about the situation, that would be egregious. There's no way possible we can evaluate a teacher without a criteria and just come in on a whim and create an evaluation system. So my challenge is this. I have to shortly create an evaluation system for the CEO, something that does not exist at the state level, which it should. So we are going to, I have to go all the way back to 2017 and 18 and re-examine all of the processes and have a tool that will match that up. Here's the unfair part. For whatever reason, somebody decided that this needs to be a quarterly meeting. This community cannot wait until next fall at some point in time. So I will try to expedite the process as quickly as possible. And I don't know if it's up there or not. We'll get it up there here in a second. I cannot have a tool that is created in the dark. Sound familiar? Created in the dark that judges another person or puts another person's job on the line without having it as a public tool. So my purpose for today is just to show the tool, and within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to work diligently with the CEO and the staff and the community to figure out exactly, and I've already had individual conversations, to figure out exactly where we are and how we rank from 2017 until 2018. And with that said, from 2017-18, when the CEO first arrived, it's all about policy, correct? It's all about implementing things. There's no way possible you can take an entire district and turn it around and upside down, or whatever the case is, and change the trajectory in 1 year. There's too much strain on individual teachers, administrators, parents, and community. That's way too much strain. So we have to be sensible. So my goal is to be as sensible as possible, create an evaluation tool that speaks to the systemic implementation of processes and policy the first year. However it falls. The second year, we will talk about the implementation and results, especially when we talk about graduation rates and arrears, and stuff like that. So we have to take that into account, and I will repeat this. Anybody will listen. The state report card is one indicator of a district's success. It's not the beginning end of your tenure or your representation of your district. So we have to find other indicators that really speaks to your district and the hard work that folks are doing. So with this said, I'm going to take your strategic plan that you created. I was not involved with that. I just happened to see it, which is part of the Lorain Promise. Unpack those items and categorize those items and really figure out who did what, when, where, who's accountable, who dropped the ball, when they dropped the ball, and what the next steps needs to be with that individual or groups of individuals. The same due process that you would expect as a tenured teacher, as a person working at your job, as a person in your household. I will grant that same here as well. And with that said, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard decisions that need to be made. And my final report will obviously be public, and I also have to have conversations with folks at the Ohio Department of Education. This is not a unilateral decision. I am not the kingmaker. I'm all about empowering the voices of professionals who work. So with that said, I cannot come in and arbitrarily just throw the axe on somebody or prop them up. There has to be a process that's fair for everybody involved. So with that said, it's the email that I sent you. So they can't pull the document out. So we'll put the document online.
You can probably email it to us, correct?
So email it out?
Yeah,
Okay.
we get a mass email.
Mass email?
Yeah.
Okay, does that work for everybody?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we'll send out a mass email of the document, so that way we are aware as to what's going on and what's happening in that case. And believe me, this is a working document because it's never been done before. There is no CEO in the state of Ohio that has had this level of scrutiny or evaluation. Okay, so and that's good, because we want to hold each other accountable, right?
Yes.
We want to hold each other accountable, make sure that we're doing the things that we said we're going to do, from the custodian's office all the way to the superintendent's desk or the CEO's desk. We want to make sure everybody's accountable in between. That's okay. So with that said, we'll email out the document to make sure that everybody has it, can take a look at it, and then we'll go from there.
What document is that?
So the document that we're talking about is a review of the CEO's performance.
Okay, I got a quick question before I don't mean to interrupt. Now, the questions are gonna be like the ones that the board was supposed to have for the superintendent?
I can't speak to that, and we're not gonna open up the floor
No.
to specific questions at this moment, because everybody will have a question. Okay? Yeah, everybody will have a question, but as you guys know, I'm always available, and we will make time. So with that said, we will probably in the near future, schedule another meeting until we get this thing right. This is too important to have to go into next fall, fumbling and bumbling doing things, and emotions still being involved. Okay? All right, with that said, we will move on in our agenda. And at this time, I want to introduce some of our very hard-working principals who took time to stick around and talk about some of the great things that they're doing in their buildings as well. Okay, presentation from our principals, and I know there's some movement happening. So our principals, you can share some of the great things that are happening, introduce yourself and your buildings that you're in, and talk about the rock star teachers and students that you have in your school.
Absolutely. So good evening, because now it's evening, right? It's like, we are so happy to be here. We were asked by Dr. Sampson to come and kind of share some good things that are happening in our buildings. So that's why we are here. My name is Ray Bastock. I've been here forever. We won't even go into that. But we are, who's clicking the button? We are here to talk about what is going right in our schools. And that's right. We're here. This is the best part, curriculum and instruction and what is going right in our schools, right here. So we're here to talk about, I'm too short. We're here to talk about how we are in the process of creating excellent schools. Oh, cool. Creating a system of excellent schools. So we're going to start by talking about Admiral King Elementary, and Lori Wood's going to talk about what she's doing as far as the ELA shifts. Then we're going to go to Megan Young, and she's going to talk about her school, Garfield Elementary, and the writing focus she put into place to help her scholars and her teachers. Then we're going to move to Helen Steiner Rice Elementary with Brandon Easton, and he's going to talk about how important instructional rounds and feedback has been in his building, and then I will finish it up at Longfellow Middle with how we have incorporated weekly data meetings for our teachers and our scholar success. So here we go, Lori. Here we go.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for sticking around. I am Lori Wood. I am the proud principal of Admiral King Elementary, where I boast that we have some of the best teachers. Yay! And sure they're all here. So at Admiral King Elementary, our motto is we do whatever, doing whatever it takes, and we do that on a daily basis. I don't know who's clicking. So at the beginning of the school year, we took a look at to kind of determine where our bright spots were, as well as where our areas of urgency are. At just a very cursory glance, you can kind of see that our scholars had not met any of the indicators on last year's report card. So we wanted to really focus on who were the scholars in our building and what were their needs. And so we recognized that last year's third graders, which are this year's fourth graders, 77.1% of them were below proficient when it comes to ELA. And then we saw that same trend for our current fifth graders. Looking at their results, that we had 41.7% of our scholars that did not meet proficient standards. So obviously that created a sense of urgency within our fabulous teachers and staff, so we got together and we understood that we needed to narrow our focus this year on ELA, in particular paying attention to the 3 shifts in the standards, as well as how that would impact our focus in what we would be doing within our classroom. So our teachers really stepped up to the plate and really honed in on ELA for this year. So the first part of the year, we took a really intense look at that first shift, ensuring that our scholars are practicing regularly with complex text and with using academic language. So what they did is we become very critical consumers of the text that we are putting in front of our scholars. And we evaluated every piece of writing that went through them in 2 different lenses. We looked at them qualitatively using a multi-tiered structure system, looking at the text structure, the language features, purpose, and the knowledge demands. I have brought with me, if anybody would like to look afterwards, I do have the publication from OTE that talks about text complexity as well as the model that is used to be able to evaluate text and should it be in front of our scholars or not. So as we started making sure that what was in front of our scholars every day was complex and worthy of being there, we started to focus on that second shift of is based on background and opinion. And what that leaves is gaps in learning and opportunities for our scholars and does not set them up for success in career life and college. So our teachers, we took a really intense look at what we were doing within our writing and making sure that we were writing to prompts. I want to share with you an experience that kind of brought our staff together and made us understand the importance of paying close attention to this second shift in ELA. I was called to a classroom and the teacher was frustrated and one of our very young scholars was frustrated and kind of crying. I said, okay, so I went in prepared to have my principal face on, right? And you're gonna do this and that. And so I said, so what are you doing? And she said, well, they were writing and the prompt that was given that day was, do you want to, what do you prefer, breakfast or dinner? And so for many of us who have that background experience and that schema developed, might be an easy topic to write upon. But for this scholar, she didn't have that schema. Her background knowledge was not differentiated between, like, what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for dinner? What are the rituals and routines? So with not having that shared experience and that common understanding, it put that scholar into a position of frustration and behavior. And I gotta give a huge shout out to the teacher in that classroom. And so we talked about this and where that came from and made some curriculum shifts and ensured that what we were doing went along to like a Goldilocks and the Three Bears and something that we could provide that shared experience, and then that scholar was then successful in her next writing opinion piece. So that was part of the journey into the second shift. So as we were able to understand that text complexity and then writing and speaking to text was important, we started to then turn our attention to the third shift in ELA, which is building background knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. So as we look at the background experiences of our scholars, and we realize that it is important that we immerse them into great experiences, that they are building a general knowledge of what is happening not only here locally, but around the world, and giving that through text. Text is a way that we can level the playing field for all of our scholars by providing that shared experience and giving that same background. So no matter where you live, no matter what your experiences are in life, you can still engage in that writing process and have that same shared experience. So what you see up there are some of the texts that our scholars have engaged in this year. Very high quality. They were purchased with our building level instructional funds because it's something that we believed in for our scholars to make sure that they were engaging in high quality text. So we are continuing to move forward with our focus on ELA and setting those shifts and continue to move our scholars forward. And I'm just really excited to continue this move forward with our amazing teachers and staff. So I thank you very much for allowing me to share about Admiral King. And at this time, Megan Young from Garfield is going to share with you their journey through the writing process.
Garfield Elementary has had a huge focus this year on writing, and writing again in response to text. Lori talked about that a little bit also. But with college and career readiness, there are two anchor standards. So the first one is basically all wrapped around writing opinion pieces, and then the second one is writing about informative and explanatory text. So from pre-K all the way up through 5th grade, we've had a very strong focus in mainly opinion writing, and then for grade 3, a heavy focus on informative and explanatory text, writing based off of text. So from the beginning of the year, we have put the Ohio State rubrics for grades 3, 4, and 5 in front of our scholars so that it's very clear as to what the expectations are to receive a 10-point answer on the OST. And on the right there, you see a opinion writing rubric for grades K, 1, and 2, which models directly after the OST. These are very important rubrics because we use those cross-curriculum. So our social studies, when we're teaching in social studies, we'll use those also when we're doing writing with our students in the classroom. So why a writing focus? It's amazing to see the growth from when we began this journey in September
Some of our kindergarten students all the way up through 5th grade were writing like 1-2 sentences with very, very little depth to any of the content that they were putting in their writing. But as you can see here, from every classroom that we go into, there's a huge writing focus that's connected to the rubrics. We have students on Google Classroom practicing daily, typing their responses because that's what they're going to be expected to do in a couple weeks on the OST. Sorry. And then you can just see also just throughout our entire building, showcases, bulletin boards, we're always highlighting the exemplar work that our kids are doing. So lots of credit goes to our teachers for just putting a huge focus around writing in the classrooms. This, I think, is a great example to show you because that is 2 different examples of kindergarten writing. Our teachers, again, I mean, the amount of focus that they put with, these are 5-year-old children writing like 2-page responses to text. One of them is around their favorite habitat, and the other one they read a story about my best pet, and then they had to write an opinion piece about what their favorite pet was. And on this page a little higher up, our 2nd graders read a story just last week on pufferfish. And Ms. McDaniel, who is our Dean of Academics, was in the 2nd grade classroom with Ms. Schuneman, and they dug really, really deep into the story, pulled a lot of vocabulary and built some background knowledge, and students performed and did a really awesome they read there. And the other side on the left side is just an example of some of our 5th grade writing. So again, we're just very, very proud of the effort that our teachers have put in place. Our scholars are very, very proud of their work, and we're just excited to see how this shows up on our OST when our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders go ahead and tackle that in the next couple weeks to come. So next we have Brandon Easton, rapper Brandon Easton. He is going to come up and speak on instructional rounds.
Yeah, I already heckled half the teachers from my school early. So like I said, my name is Brandon Easton. Oh, I didn't say that, but Miss Young did. So first and foremost, I'm the one up here presenting for Helen Steiner Rice, but I feel like a lot of the work and the stuff that I'm going to be showing and sharing really is a shout out for the teachers and everything that they do every single day at Helen Steiner Rice. So the thing that I'm going to specifically speak on is instructional rounds and feedback, and as it pertains to Helen Steiner Rice. One thing to keep in mind, instructional rounds are happening throughout the entire district. So like I said, I'm just speaking specifically for Helen Steiner Rice. So way back in the beginning of the year, like when we were introducing those instructional rounds, those whetstones, getting in the classroom, we were all about compliance. We were all about getting in the classroom, our leaders getting in the classroom, giving the teachers feedback, and finalizing it. And then so it really wasn't until the 3 of us came together and we really started asking ourselves, what is the purpose of the instructional rounds? And it was there where we started realizing it's really for that feedback purpose. It's really to grow our teachers and to help support our teachers. And so it was really now, rather than just a compliance, we were really being more specific about trying to get into every single teacher's classroom for feedback, and not as a gotcha, not as an evaluative, but really as a support. How can we help support you? And then so you can see like on the bottom, they referenced the big board earlier. So this is a big board just of Helen Steiner Rice, and really just looking at the top line, which is the instructional round feedback. And then so just looking at the progression, just the amount of feedback that we're getting in the classrooms with the feedback. So you go to the next slide. And then so kind of just talking back, so like the instructional rounds was great. So we were doing the instructional rounds, we were finalizing, everything was good. But then comes the feedback piece. So we're like, well, are we sure the teachers are actually reading the feedback? And then so now we're trying to be more purposeful with that feedback. So coming back to making sure that we're supporting our teachers and we're coaching them as much as possible. No, you're going ahead of me, that's okay. So what we started doing is actually, before we left the classroom, printing that feedback off for them, putting it in their box, and then scheduling a one-on-one debrief with them. Once again, just a time to debrief with the teacher, talk about something that we saw specifically, and then also a chance for them to ask questions, but then also a chance to provide support and that coaching as well. And then you go on. And then so with that, we started creating what was called TOOTS. And TOOTS was created last year, and so it's teachers observing other teachers. And the idea behind this is we have phenomenal teachers in our classroom. We don't need to necessarily lead the school. We can showcase what we have. And so typically a lot of times how it works, like even during a debrief, a teacher will ask, hey, can I go and see such and such teacher who's doing something maybe in their classroom, or maybe I want to see how does differentiation work. And so a lot of times, now what we will do is that teacher will have a chance to go with a particular administrator into another teacher's classroom to observe. And then while that's taking place, another administrator will basically cover that teacher's classroom. So it's not during their planning, but it's something that we offer for the teachers. Oh, wait, no. Oh, I'm about ready to do a plug, so just hang on. But with this, the biggest thing with this, we don't want teachers to replicate what they see. We want them to reflect. So when you go in and you're seeing another teacher, it's really that reflection piece. So really there's a time afterwards to talk with the teacher who is observing, the teacher who is being observed, and then the administrator as well. Okay, now you can go on, and then I'll do a little plug. So if anyone, there was much larger, so I was expecting my YouTube numbers to jump up. I only have 24 subscribers. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, your sound doesn't work? Well, we don't have to play it. Because what I was going to do after the meeting, make sure you log on YouTube, click Brandy's, and make sure you click the right Brandy's. There's 2 of them out there. The other one has a lot more subscribers. There's a lot of people here, though. There's a lot. So if you get bored, so basically what this is, the deans and I created a video. Hang on. So the deans and I created a video. So we did this actually maybe a month or 2 ago, and really just sums up everything I talked about. Probably does a better job than what I just said, though.
Sorry, this is not my computer.
You'll get the gist of it. So, even better. So now you have to sign on to the YouTube. Click the correct Brandy's thing, and it's probably one of the more videos. What's that?
I have a question.
Oh, no questions.
Is that a district-wide practice?
No.
I love it. I really believe the best professional development for teachers is working and watching other teachers. So hats off to you for that. And by the way, I received great feedback about you and your leadership, so keep up the great work.
Thank you.
So I'm Rebecca, I'm from Longfellow Middle, and I'm kind of glad this video did work because I didn't know how I was going to come up after that. I don't have that ability at all. But at Longfellow Middle, one of the points of pride for us is the weekly data meetings that we've been having. And for those of us who have been here a long time, they take place in the good old TBTs that the Ohio Improvement Process made us do for a long time. But we really took this to heart, and I have to give all shout out to my dean, Andrew Hoffman, because he runs them, and he is awesome, and he is there building, very focused on instruction. So we are talking about weekly data meetings, and in those weekly data meetings, we talk about complex texts, we talk about standards focus, we talk about the aspects of rigor and math. We go to backwards designs to look at assessments with the standard first, and then figure out how we're going to get those kids from that standard to that assessment. We talk about scaffolding instruction, about rigor and engagement in classrooms. We talk about emphasis on student work, driving instructional decision-making in our weekly data meetings. But this is probably the most important one for me. Providing targeted feedback to our scholars through development of level assessments to transition to standards-based grading. That is so important because when you hear our scholars talk at Longfellow, you will hear them say, I'm at a mastery of 3. I know I can go get a 4. Man, I'm at 2, and I know at that 2 means I'm really at the basic level, limited level. I gotta move up. So that is so important for our scholars. Sarah? So when we have these weekly data meetings, we focus on standards and backwards designs. We talk about what our scholars need to know and be able to do. What does that standard say to us? Then we talk about what's that previous standard below it, because if we have gaps, we need to address that to get our kids to where they need to be. We also talk about math. We talk about conceptual, procedure, and application. Those are the rigor pieces in math. Because a lot of times, especially like if you're like me and you're not a math person and it goes over your head, we're very stuck on the procedural part, but math is so much more. And we need to give our scholars that ability to think conceptually and math. And then we ask how we're determining mastery. So this is another point of pride that I have to say the teachers at Longfellow, they are amazing. I was so shocked that this happened so quickly. We talked about creating assessments that determine mastery. So when our teachers are looking at the standard and they're looking at backwards 9 and looking at what kids have to know and be able to do, they're creating assessments that determine where those students are. Are they at a mastery level? Are they advanced? Are they below? Where do I need to go? It's amazing what the teachers have done with this. And scholars know where they are. And isn't that the most important piece? That the kids know where they are. Next steps, that we talk about planning for engagement and rigor. So we get the standard, we talk about what they know, we have to know, what they have to be able to do. We talk about where they need to end up at that assessment and what we need to see from them. But then we talk about what's the meat. How do we deliver that lesson? So those are the things we talk about when we got to be scaffolding, instruction, not text. We have got to stop lowering text for our kids. They can do it. We just have to teach them how. If we don't expose them to grade level text, we are doing them a disservice. And we need to start focusing on that. We talk about do nows, instructional routines that focus on addressing previous learned content. And then we talk about the tasks that they're doing. What are they doing? And I'm talking engagement. I'm not talking about walking in the classroom and seeing a student just do a worksheet. I'm talking about, are they talking about the content? Are they talking where they are in that content? What are they doing? Are they truly engaged in their learning? And then we talk about exit tickets, which is so key. When that scholar walks out of that classroom, how do I know as a teacher they got what I taught that day? If I'm not assessing them when they walk in, then I'm not doing them justice either. So we really talk about that. So, before I go, because Allison is not getting out of this, Allison Warfield, she's one of my rock star teachers. I'm going to have her just give a little bit of a testament about how the weekly data meetings have helped her and what they talk about in those meetings.
So I haven't been fighting a cold and flu and all that other good stuff that goes around schools for like a week now. So pardon my voice if you can't hear me. But one of the things that we did at one of our weekly data meetings last couple weeks is we took an assessment that our English department gave our students on writing argumentative response, very similar to the OST. And we came together as an English department and we shared what our scholars had done. And then we went through the rubric that the state provides, and we graded them like the state does. And we were able to see some trends. I know for my students, we saw a trend that they were not sticking to the side that they picked. They were kind of going back and forth. They were looking more at it like a pro and con rather than stating their claim and keeping to the claim. Which was super beneficial. So I went back to the classroom, actually that next period, because my plan's 7th, I went 8th period, and I was like, listen, when you make a claim, you have to stick to it. Whether you agree with it or not, you stick to it, and that's what you write about. And so I used it to guide my instruction immediately. So it's super beneficial, and Ray's not kidding. Andy, our Dean of Academics, is super awesome. Like, he keeps everything together for us academically, so.
We talked about how we see success at Longfellow. One of the successes we have is that 60% of the class was used by TNTP adolescents that were mostly aligned. You look at 60% mostly aligned like that. But if you really think about it, and if you're a teacher sitting in here, you know those standards are not easy. And to hit those are not easy, it takes work. So when you hear that standards aren't aligned, or lessons aren't aligned to standards, it's hard. It's a hard thing to do, it's hard work. So we were excited for 60%. That means our teachers are growing in their profession. That's why we titled this Perfecting Our Craft, because that's what we're doing. So we were very excited to see that. And the last slide up there, we gave 2 surveys to Longfellow staff. One survey was on kind of like where we're going for next year. And one survey was asking the question, what academic successes have you seen? So the comments in the blue are the ones that we asked, what successes have you seen? And if you read those, they're very powerful. And I love the last one, academics have become more rigorous and student-based. That made me so excited to see that. And then on the other side, we asked, we gave to our staff, we said, here's what we're doing next year, what do you think? And the squares are like what squared with you, like what resonated with you, what is going on in your heart that you know that you've been doing, and that was exciting too. If you see Do Now, exit tickets, but that third bullet, I have seen a clearer picture of what scholars know and can understand and can articulate through Do Nows and exit tickets. That is powerful. Powerful kids and it's powerful teachers. The hearts, I was excited because it was what do you feel now? And we had so many confident bring on next year. I'm understanding standards-based grading because those level assessments help them do that. So I was really excited to see that we were very confident in coming up to next year. So as I end, as again, I've been here for a long time. I've taught with a lot of you out there and that were sitting out there. I have been a principal for some of you and a boss. And there are really, really great teachers. With that being said, I know we talk about resources and textbooks, but none of that can replace the person in the classroom. And I get nervous when I hear so much emphasis on text because that's not you. You are the difference maker in the classroom. And many of you, most of you that I encounter every day and have worked with are some of the greatest people and teachers I've seen. But go home and reflect. Because if somebody next to you isn't doing that, you need to be honest with them. Because it only helps you and our scholars. So that's what I asked. After all of this meeting, after all the hoopla, after everything we talked about, just go and reflect. Are you doing, and is everyone that you encounter and everyone you're teaching with doing what's best for kids every day? Everything that all of us talked about is what's best for kids, whether it's Mr. Hardy sitting here or somebody else. That's what's important.
I'd like to thank the principals for taking the time out. What folks don't realize is when you're principal and you do stuff like this, tomorrow morning somebody has to turn the lights on, open the doors, even with a tired smile and a cup of joe in your hand, you'll make it happen and you'll show up and do everything that's best for your kids. So we do appreciate you sticking with us. We've been going 3 hours strong, and great communication, great feedback. At this moment, we're going to shift in we're going to move forward with the agenda because I know it's late in the night. So what I'm hearing is the culture that these principals have developed. It's about their behaviors that the adults and the kids and the leadership's having, the values, how do we value each other, and what do we value in our community, and then obviously it's also about the beliefs. Do I really believe in these kiddos? Do I believe in my teachers that are in there every day working with our kids? Do I believe in the administration that's working with us, supporting us? Do I believe in the parents? So those are the key components of culture that I'm hearing, and I'm also hearing that organizational leadership. I've done this a long time. I'm 22 years into this. I've done it, same kind of stuff that we're doing here, turnaround, Detroit, turnaround, places down in Tennessee, all the way to North Carolina, okay? So this isn't my first go around the youthful face, lots of Botox. Just kidding, kidding, okay? With that said, it's about we the people. There is no one singular leader. When we go all the way back to the Constitution, we, the people, at the local level, empowering people at the local level. I can't say it loud enough or often enough. And also, at the same time, when you're empowered, you have to have a growth mindset. How can we get better together? Not how can I beat you down and get a political point. Not how can I beat you down so my side can win. Not how can I beat you down so I can take your job away. We are better together, and we're in this together, regardless of the people sitting at this table. And my hope is that I will not be here long enough that Lorain will have what you need to continue forward as a local school district and a local city. I'll come by and go to the brew shop and have some coffee and say hi to folks, but that's about it. I want you to have local control. All right, so we are going to shift in our agenda, and we are going to go into executive session. We are going to consider employment of public employees, and the commission will not take action upon coming out of executive session. So the remainder of the items on executive session, if you can scratch those out, just the ones that I mentioned, and we're going to go into executive session, have that conversation, and the commission will not take action upon our executive session. To enter executive session, can I get a motion?